from 6 chefs feeding 100,000 people for free at the Gurudwara Bangla Sahib temple in New Delhi, India, to Korean chefs making 10,000 lunches by hand. We traveled all over the globe to meet 20 master chefs making the world's biggest batches of food. Our first stop is Maison du Beurre, where Master Chef Jean-Yves uses a 19th century technique of malaxage to knead butter with a wooden wheel. We're in Saint-Malo, Brittany, France, and we're about to visit Bourdieu, a traditional Maison du Beurre or butter house. When you picture butter, you probably think of a yellow block in a plastic bag. Well, not here. Here, butter is done artisanally. Everything is churned, kneaded, and shaved by hand. And I can't wait to see that. Let's go. In February, we met with Jean-Yves Bourdieu, son and grandson of butter and cheesemakers who brought back to France the 19th century technique of malaxage, using this big wooden wheel to knead the butter. To Jean-Yves, the malaxage is a more romantic way to make butter.
Je suis toujours parti du principe que ce qui était le plus important, c'était les émotions. Après, on va essayer de voir comment on peut faire avec les émotions. Mais si on fait un produit que marketing, ça ne m'intéresse pas. Comme ça ne m'intéresse pas de produire 10 millions de tonnes de beurre, ce n'est pas mon métier. Moi, je suis un tout petit bonhomme et je fais des toutes petites choses, c'est tout.
The malaxage is really what makes Bourdieu butter unique. These are 50 kilo blocks of butter extracted from milk, and are pretty standard in the butter making industry, even for the most artisanal. But while everyone else will use huge centrifuges to filter out the last remaining drops of buttermilk, butter at the Bourdieu workshop is flattened by a wooden wheel and worked by hand by Eric.
Là, ce qu'on va faire, c'est qu'on va vous montrer un malaxage complet. On va découper ces cubes de beurre et on va le transformer. Voilà.
Let's do it. Little by little, the malaxage is going to give butter a new life. Dating back to the late 19th century, this tool was first used to rework different butters. At Bourdieu, it also helps give butter the desired texture.
C'est le plus mauvais moment de l'année pour le malaxage, puisque le beurre, la qualité de la texture du beurre, n'est que le résultat de ce que mangent les animaux. En hiver, les animaux mangent du fourrage, ce qui va donner des beurres blancs, friables, cassants, sans grande odeur. Vous voyez la vis ici, elle est légèrement humide, mais elle n'est pas encore complètement trempée. On est sur des beurres secs. Alors petit à petit, le beurrier est en train de rendre les choses plus agréables à travailler.
Et le bois, ça vous aide?
Le bois ou le métal, c'est un geste mécanique, peu importe. Par contre, c'est plus agréable, c'est plus joli, voilà. C'est important que ce soit beau dans la vie.
Oui,
hein?
Oui, c'est vrai.
C'est très dur ce qu'il fait là. C'est très dur ce qu'il fait, Eric, là. C'est le moment le plus dur. Et là, il obtient un beurre remarquable et franchement, il n'était pas facile. Hein.
Là, tu vas juste le rouler comme ça. Essayer de l'enrouler comme ça. On va le laisser tourner et après, tu vas le reprendre.
It's like no way we'll do this. Comme ça?
Tu le roules, ouais.
Comme ça? Oh, wow, super big.
D'accord. Les gants, ils sont trop grands.
Let me just go this way, maybe.
Tu lèves.
Oh man, this is going super fast.
Tu ramènes les gants. Sinon, tu la mets tout.
Ok.
Tu le
Où?
fais une fois et après, juste en haut. Tu laisses ton doigt comme ça.
Ah, ok.
Juste
Ça marche. C'est
ça,
plus
ça va.
petit. C'est plus petit.
Tu mets ici. Allez.
Ici?
C'est bon.
Yeah, when you see him doing that, it almost has like an harmony. It's not easy. Monsieur Bourdieu said this is 50 kilos of butter. So try and lift a bit of it. It's going to be like what, 10 kilos just in one go? Il faut combien de temps pour apprendre à ramasser le
pour
beurre
apprendre
comme ça?
ce métier, 3 ans.
3 ans.
Oui. Vous savez pourquoi?
Non, pourquoi?
Parce que le soleil et la pluie ne tombent pas de la même manière tous les ans. Et c'est le soleil et la pluie qui vont donner à l'herbe et à la terre un goût particulier que les vaches doivent aimer et que les saisons vont mettre en musique. Le printemps, l'été, l'automne, l'hiver. Et que pour apprendre à découvrir le beurre, qui n'est que le résultat de la nourriture des animaux, il faut 3 ans.
Eric then salts the butter using fine salt. This step is crucial to make sure the butter finally rejects all the leftover water it has in it.
On est en train de voir, vous voyez, quelque chose. La vis est en train de se tremper, l'eau est en train de couler, le sel est en train d'attaquer la molécule de matière grasse, et la molécule de matière grasse prend le sel comme une agression et rejette l'eau qu'elle a en elle. Et l'eau s'en va. On va avoir perdu presque 1 litre d'eau.
Okay.
Mais, et je finis, en perdant l'humidité, je concentre la matière sèche. Dans la matière sèche, il y a le gras, et dans le gras, il y a le goût.
Oh wow. So actually I can see that it's getting wetter and wetter. It's picking up more water.
Vous entendez le bruit? Quand mon beurre chante, c'est qu'il pleure. Quand mon beurre pleure, c'est qu'il chante.
According to Geneviève, they work with old techniques, but they're not trying to recreate an old recipe.
On travaille avec des méthodes d'hier, mais on utilise un lait vivant d'aujourd'hui. Donc le beurre que je fabrique, le but de mon beurre n'est pas d'aller retrouver le beurre de 1857. Ce que fait Eric, c'est véritablement quelque chose qui n'existe plus. Ce que vous voyez là, c'est des gestes du 19e avec un lait de 2020 et c'est comment restituer et perpétuer la qualité de nos anciens, mais en vivant dans le monde d'aujourd'hui. Donc, je vais prendre un tout petit morceau.
Big one? Ah non.
Non, non, non, like this, ok. Voilà. C'est passé le temps. It's very salt.
It's softer than the butter I'm used to.
24 heures plus tard, le beurre d'hier.
It's much sweeter, this one.
Le sel s'atténue, le sel ne disparaît pas, mais son intensité diminue. Et par contre, le goût de la crème est plus important. Un bon beurre ne doit jamais être mangé en sortie de baratte ou de malaxeur plateau. Il doit être mangé 3, 4, 5 jours après. Parce que les équilibres, l'harmonie des goûts se met en place. Les cannelures, les stries que l'on voit dans le beurre sont la preuve que ce beurre a bien été fabriqué chez nous. C'est la reproduction de la vis cannelée. Et ça, c'est la preuve irréfutable.
Parce que vous êtes le seul à l'avoir.
Bourdieu also makes flavored butters, including chili butter, buckwheat butter, vanilla butter, and more.
Vous faites aussi du beurre avec des algues?
Oui. Ça a été mon premier beurre composé en 1985. C'est un beurre un peu particulier qui est intéressant parce qu'il est à la fois très coloré et en même temps extrêmement parfumé. Et je vous laisse le goûter, vous fermez les yeux. Fermez les yeux, voilà. Fermez les yeux. Vous n'avez pas de problème. Fermez les yeux, vous n'avez pas... Ça va? Vous n'avez pas les pieds mouillés. Parce que ça arrive souvent avec le beurre aux algues qu'on ait les pieds mouillés. Ça va?
Yeah, very fresh. It's very fresh and yeah, it tastes like seaweed, but yeah, it's not fishy at all. It's nice and sweet. It really reminds you of that like seaside wind when you just sit there at the beach and you can smell it. It's something like that. Whoop, what's up?
Il y a des mouettes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're just like being catapulted into the picture now.
C'est une odeur terrible.
It's marvelous.
It's marvelous.
It's really, yeah, it's really incredible. And so, and this one is your like signature from Brittany because you're from this region.
It's the roots of my My identity. Ça, c'est une vraie identité. Comme le beurre au sarrasin. Il faut que ce soit comme ça. Et puis, si je vais au Japon, c'est comme ça que j'ai découvert le yuzu. Si je vais ailleurs, je ne sais pas. Peut-être un jour, si je vais sur Mars, je ferai un beurre tout vert. Je ne sais pas.
No. I would like to taste that then. After it's ready, each stack of freshly churned butter is then placed into this butter cutter, another machine signature to Bourdieu.
Il était très important qu'au moment de faire les modèles, nous n'ayons pas de machine qui soit violente, mais qui soit très douce. Or, ce petit poussoir, les mottes de beurre qui viennent d'être faites vont dans le poussoir et tout simplement par un effet de vérin sont poussées ici et grâce à cet appareil qui date du 19e, par l'écartement de chaque corde de guitare, nous avons le grammage désiré.
There's a lot of water, so
Il y a toujours de l'eau.
yeah. So this means that there is still water that's coming out of the butter.
Ma méthode traditionnelle, il y a toujours de l'eau. Nous ne rajoutons pas d'eau. Au contraire, on en enlève.
Cette machine, est-ce que vous êtes le seul à la voir?
Ah oui, ça, alors là pour le coup, oui.
Ok.
Et on l'a encore utilisée, cette machine-là, il y a 250 ans. Vous voulez que je vous montre où? Pendant la Révolution française. On appelle ça une Marie-Antoinette. Je vais vous interpréter une œuvre du 18e pour harpe et beurre.
Oh non. So 50 kilos de beurre. Hein?
Regarde,
Oh
il en
non.
reste.
The only thing that is left is shaping. And just like the rest, it is all done by hand. Each shape and size is custom. Some chefs may order these bite-sized shapes. Others may just buy the whole stack and cut it themselves.
C'est des modèles uniques. Il n'y a pas de machine ici. Nous sommes des êtres humains. Vous voyez, avec le petit pompon.
Ok.
C'est extrêmement rare, il est tout seul à le faire. Et là, pareil, vous voyez, c'est des modèles rares. Il y a plusieurs tailles.
Ça ressemble à une construction qu'on a en Italie, en fait, dans ma région.
Ah, c'est vrai?
Oui. Est-ce que vous connaissez Albero Bello?
Oui.
C'est ça. Est-ce qu'il y a une différence entre les objets qu'il utilise?
Il peut y en avoir, oui. Je t'arrête. Déjà, il y a une partie striée, une partie lisse. Là, elle est petite, là, elle est grande. Et à chaque fois, la main de l'homme ou de la femme va travailler comme ça, comme ça, comme ça. Ça dépend. C'est un métier, hein. Merci.
Est-ce qu'il y a une raison particulière pour laquelle vous avez cette forme très petite?
De faire ça d'abord, parce qu'en fait, si on prenait un morceau, voilà, voilà, vas-y, fais-le. Alors en fait, il y a des craquelures partout, alors que là, il n'y en a plus. Voilà, c'est la qualité de la texture et le visuel, l'esthétique en fait. Hein. Mais nous avons fait énormément d'études. Hein. Nous sommes des scientifiques du tapé du beurre. Donc actuellement, le match est entre Lucienne l'embobineuse, Fred le mastiqueur.
There's something in this butter.
Mon grand-père avait fait le même métier bien avant. Et j'avais toujours entendu dire que ce métier était difficile, compliqué, voilà. Mais j'ai un défaut. Je fais toujours le contraire de ce qu'on me dit. Et comme ça, je peux comprendre. Et en fait, je suis tombé amoureux. Aujourd'hui, il y a peut-être 2% de la production beurrière qui se fait en baratte. Tout le reste fait avec des butirateurs, des canons à beurre. Hein. Il faut nourrir le plus grand nombre. C'est très important. Hein. Mais je pense que, vous voyez, effectivement, si dans l'endroit où nous sommes, on remplaçait tous mes collaborateurs, tous mes compagnons par des machines, on irait beaucoup plus vite, on gagnerait certainement beaucoup plus d'argent, mais il ne se passerait plus rien ici. Si j'ai fait ce métier, c'est aussi pour qu'il se passe quelque chose. S'il n'y a plus rien, ça ne m'intéresse pas. Amen.
This crew of 20 chefs is working against the clock as they prepare 150,000 sariyas for Kerala's harvest festival, Onam. Every sadhya is made of 20 distinct vegetarian dishes and requires the team to prepare at least a month in advance. It is a huge task, and all the responsibility for delivering it successfully falls on Chef Mahadevan.
എല്ലാവരും ഒരേ രീതിയിലേക്കും ഒരേ മെന്റാലിറ്റിയിലും ഒരേ മൈൻഡിലും പ്രയത്നിക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിനെപ്പോഴും റിസൾട്ട് ഉണ്ടാവും.
We visited Vinayaka caterers in Kerala to see how Chef Mahadevan and his team prepare an Onam sadhya in such big batches. Among the 20 dishes they make, one of their most popular is a dessert called Palada Payasam.
ആ മലയാളിയുടെ അടുത്ത് നമുക്ക് ചോദിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അറ്റ്ലീസ്റ്റ് ഇവിടെ കേരളത്തിലുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ കുറിച്ച് പറയേ വേണ്ട. ഒരിക്കലെങ്കിലും ഇവിടുന്ന് പായസം കഴിക്കാത്തതായിട്ട് ഒരാളും ഇല്ല. അത്രയ്ക്കും ഒരു വൈഡായിട്ട് പൊക്കോണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു മാസ്റ്റർ പീസ് ഡിഷാണ്.
Making this dish is time intensive and begins with making rice flakes out of a brown rice that is washed, dried, and crushed. Coconut oil and sugar are then added into the rice, and the mixture is placed inside a banana leaf, where it is rolled, tied, and steamed.
സോ അപ്പോൾ എന്താ വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ആ ഒരു ഇലയുടെ ഒരു ഫ്ലേവർ അതിലേക്ക് വന്നു, നാടനായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ഇത് അതിലേക്ക് വരുന്നുണ്ട്.
The resulting rice flakes are pressed in the morning and set aside. Also in the morning, 120 liters of milk are poured into a large pot and boiled.
ഈ പാല് കയറ്റി ആ പാല് തിളച്ച് പാല് വറ്റി കുറുകി ഇങ്ങോട്ടേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ ആ അട അതിലേക്ക് ഇട്ടിട്ട് സമാസമം സെറ്റാക്കുന്നതാണ് ഈ പാലട എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഈ ഒരു പാലടയുടെ പ്രോസസ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് 5 തൊട്ട് 6 മണിക്കൂർ വരെയാണ് ഒരു പാലടയുടെ പ്രോസസ്സ്. അപ്പോൾ ആ പാലടയിൽ അത് തന്നെ ആ അത്രയും സമയം നമ്മൾ അത്രയും എഫേർട്ട് എടുത്ത് അതിനു വേണ്ടി നമ്മൾ നിന്ന്.
Another popular dish in the Onam Sadhya is avial, which has traditionally been made with 13 different vegetables. At Vinayaka, avial is made in batches that can feed 500 to 600 people.
അവിയലിന്റെ മോസ്റ്റ് ചാലഞ്ചിങ് പാർട്ട് എന്ന് പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇത്രയും സാധനങ്ങൾ അതിലേക്ക് വരികയാണ്. ഇതിൽ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരെണ്ണം കൂടിയാലും കുഴപ്പമാണ്, കുറഞ്ഞാലും കുഴപ്പമാണ്.
Because there are so many vegetables, everything is washed and chopped the day before cooking.
അവിയലിന് ഇവിടെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസ് എന്ന് പറയുകയാണെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചേന, മുരിങ്ങാക്കോല്, പാവയ്ക്ക, അച്ചിങ്ങ, വെള്ളരിക്ക, പടത്തിക്ക. ഇപ്പം 1000 പേരുടെ അവിയൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അതിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് 7 ബക്കറ്റ് ചേന.
In the morning, the vegetables are added inside of the giant pot and cooked on low heat.
അപ്പോൾ തീ കൺട്രോൾ ചെയ്യണതാണ് ഏറ്റവും ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ടാസ്ക്. അത്രയും ശ്രദ്ധാപൂർവം നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ മാത്രമേ നമ്മൾ അതിൽ നിന്ന് കണ്ണും കാതും അതിലേക്ക് ഇരിക്കണം, മനസ്സും മുഴുവനായിട്ട് അർപ്പിച്ച് നമ്മൾ അതിലേക്ക് ഇരിക്കുമ്പോഴേ ആ അവിയലായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. തിരിച്ചത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് ചെറിയ തീയിൽ വെച്ച് ബാക്കിയുള്ള ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസ് മുഴുവൻ അതിലേക്ക് കൊടുക്കണം. ഇത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ തിരിച്ച് നമ്മൾ വെളിച്ചെണ്ണ വെച്ച് ഇത് കൂട്ടി ഇളക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിലും ചെറിയ തീ ആയിരിക്കണം.
At this stage, chefs also add coriander, turmeric, salt, raw mango, and sour curd. Then they cover the pot and leave it to steam.
വേവിച്ച് തിരിച്ച് നമ്മളിത് ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ തൈര് നമ്മൾ കൊടുക്കുന്ന ടൈറ്റായിട്ടുള്ള കട്ടിയായിട്ടുള്ള തൈരാണ്. ആ തൈര് ലൂസായി മോരായിട്ടുണ്ടാവും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ കണ്ടൻസേഷൻ തൈര് ലൂസായിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സാഹചര്യമായിരിക്കും. ഈ തൈര് നമ്മൾ മുഴുവനും വറ്റിച്ചെടുക്കണം എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ തീ കൊടുത്തിട്ട്.
Once all of the buttermilk has been drained, the avial is ready for more spices. Cumin paste, green chili paste, and curry leaves are all added and mixed inside.
കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് നമുക്ക് തേങ്ങ ചതച്ചത് കൊടുക്കും ഈ അവിയലിലേക്ക്. പച്ച തേങ്ങ കഷ്ണങ്ങളും തേങ്ങയായിരിക്കും അതിൻ്റെ മെയിൻ ടെക്സ്ചർ. ഇപ്പം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇത്രയും സാധനങ്ങളും ഇത്രയും പല വിഭാഗങ്ങളിലുള്ള സാധനങ്ങളെല്ലാം കൂടി ഒന്ന് ചേരുമ്പോൾ അവിയൽ ഒരു സിഗ്നേച്ചർ ഡിഷ് തന്നെയാണ്. കണ്ടവാൻ എരിവുണ്ടാവില്ല, കണ്ടവാനും പുളിയും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല, കണ്ടവാനും ഉപ്പും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. എല്ലാം സമാസമം ചേർന്ന് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷാണ്.
But achieving this flavor is easier said than done.
അപ്പോൾ ഈ നമ്മൾ ഈ അവിയൽ ഉണ്ടാക്കുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ആ അവിയലിലേക്ക് കൊടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഓരോ ഇൻഗ്രീഡിയൻസും അതിൻ്റെ പെർഫെക്റ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള റേഷ്യോയിൽ വന്നാൽ മാത്രമേ ഇതെല്ലാം സമാസമം ചേർന്ന് വരൂ.
Another popular dish is sambar, which also requires a day of prepping before anything is cooked. Heaps of lentils are washed, soaked, and then boiled. Once the lentils have cooked, a mix of spices is added to the pots, including tamarind water, coriander, turmeric, asafoetida, green chilies, curry leaves, and jaggery. The sambar is brought to a boil and coconut oil is added along with chopped vegetables.
ഇപ്പം ഞങ്ങൾ ഉപയോഗിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാമ്പാർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഞങ്ങളുടെ സാമ്പാർ എടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അതിനകത്ത് മുരിങ്ങക്കോലുണ്ടാവും, പാവയ്ക്ക ഉണ്ടാവും, വഴുതനങ്ങ ഉണ്ടാവും, വെണ്ടയ്ക്ക ഉണ്ടാവും.
But the most distinct flavor of the sambar lies in its masala, which is a mix of coriander, black gram, Bengal gram, long chilies, curry leaves and asafoetida.
അത് ഓട്ടുവറവ് വറക്കോ ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ വെളിച്ചെണ്ണ ഒഴിച്ച് നമ്മൾ വറുത്ത് ഇടിച്ചെടുത്തിട്ട് ആ മസാലയാക്കി നമ്മൾ പേസ്റ്റാക്കി കൊടുക്കുന്നതാണ് വറുത്തരച്ച സാമ്പാർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. സാമ്പാറിൻ്റെ കൂടെ ബെസ്റ്റ് പെയർ നമുക്ക് ചോറിൻ്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, ഒരു ദോശയുടെ കൂടെ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, ഒരു ഇഡ്ഡലിയുടെ കൂടെ സാമ്പാർ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. അത് ഓരോ ആൾക്കാരുടെ പ്രത്യേകതയാണ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഓരോ ആൾക്കാരുടെ താല്പര്യങ്ങളാണ്. ഏതൊരു ഐറ്റം എടുത്താലും അതിനോടൊപ്പം കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്ത് പോകാൻ പറ്റുന്ന ഒരു ഡിഷാണ് സാമ്പാർ.
Chef Mahadevan's company has been making sarias for 32 years. It began cooking for groups of 50 to 100 people and eventually grew into a daily operation, serving thousands of meals every month.
അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് പെട്ടെന്നൊരു സുപ്രഭാതത്തിൽ 15,000 പേർക്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ 10,000 പേർക്ക് തേണിക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ കളിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാലും നമുക്ക് ആ മൈൻഡിൽ ഹാർട്ട് ബീറ്റ് കിടന്ന് ഓടിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കും. ആൾക്കാരുടെ നാക്കിൽ കിട്ടിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ആ ടേസ്റ്റും ആ ഒരു ക്വാളിറ്റിയും കാത്തു സൂക്ഷിക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ വെരി ടഫ് ടാസ്ക്. കാരണം അത്രയധികം ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ട്. ഉണ്ടാക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സാധനം അത് അത്രയും പെർഫെക്ഷനായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യണമല്ലോ. കാരണം ഈ ഒരു തൊഴിലെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കണത്, ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ എൻ്റെ അച്ഛൻ എന്നോട് പറഞ്ഞു തന്നിരിക്കുന്ന പ്രകാരം ഇതൊരു ദൈവികമായിട്ടുള്ള കലയാണ്. സംഗീതം പോലെ സമുദ്രമായിട്ട് കിടക്കുന്ന ഒരു മേഖലയാണ്. നമ്മൾ ദിവസവും ഇതിനെ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടും നമ്മൾ ദിവസവും ഇതിനെ ട്യൂൺ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടും നമ്മൾ പൊയ്ക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. എൻക്വയറീസ് ഒരുപാട് വരും. ബട്ട് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനൊരു പരിധിയുണ്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ലിമിറ്റ് ഉണ്ട്. ആ ലിമിറ്റിൻ്റെ മുകളിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് പോകുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും നമുക്കത് 100% സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല.
Today, Chef Mahadevan employs a crew of 20 people at the height of Onam to meet the demands of his customers.
തൊഴിലാളികൾ എന്നതല്ല, ഞങ്ങളൊരു കുടുംബമായിട്ടാണ് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. അതായത് ഇവിടെ വിനായകയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഇവിടെ ഒരു മുതലാളി തൊഴിലാളി ബന്ധമില്ല. എല്ലാവരും തൊഴിലാളികളാണ്, എല്ലാവരും ഈക്വൽ, എല്ലാവരും ഒരേപോലെ. അതാണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ വിഷയവും.
While feeding this many people is no easy feat, Chef Mahadevan remains humble about the art and craft of his work.
എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് പറഞ്ഞാലും ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ എത്രയൊക്കെ ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാലും ഞാൻ ഒരു സാധാരണക്കാരൻ. എൻ്റെ ഒരു നിയോഗമാണെങ്കിലും എനിക്കൊരു നിമിത്തമാണ്, ഞാനതിനൊരു നിമിത്തമായി.
When all of the dishes have been cooked, they are packed and brought to a dining hall where they are served as elaborately as they are cooked. Banana leaves are placed on tables and served as plates. At a traditional saria, the banana leaf tips must always face to the left of the eater. Once set, workers scoop the dishes into exact positions from left to right. And papadams, which are like spicy crackers, are added as a final touch.
പ്ലേറ്റുകളിൽ വിളമ്പുമ്പോൾ എല്ലാ വിഭവങ്ങളും വേണ്ട രീതിയിൽ വിളമ്പാൻ സാധിക്കില്ല. വിളമ്പിയാൽ തന്നെ അതെല്ലാം ഒന്നാകാൻ സാധ്യതയുണ്ട്. ഇതാണെങ്കിൽ ഇലകളിലാണെങ്കിൽ സെപ്പറേറ്റ് സ്ഥാനങ്ങളിൽ അത് വിളമ്പുകയും നമുക്ക് ആവശ്യമുള്ളത് അതിൻ്റേതായ ഒരു രുചി ശരിക്കും മനസ്സിലാക്കാനായിട്ട് ഉപയോഗിക്കുകയും ചെയ്യാം.
ദിയയുടെ കീ പോയിന്റ്സ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കീ എലിമെന്റ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ചോറ്, സാമ്പാർ, അവിയൽ, കാളൻ, തോരൻ.
The smallest portions are also served on the left side, and larger portions are closer to the right side.
ചോറ് വിളമ്പിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അവന് സാമ്പാർ നിർബന്ധമാണ്.
സാമ്പാറും കൂടി ഒഴിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു നല്ലൊരു ടേസ്റ്റ് വരും. പപ്പടവും ഈ പരിപ്പും നെയ്യും സാമ്പാറും കൂടി കുഴക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് അതിൻ്റെ ടേസ്റ്റ് വരുന്നത്.
സാമ്പാറിലെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ എല്ലാ കഷ്ണങ്ങളും വരും, എല്ലാ വെജിറ്റബിൾസും വരും സാമ്പാറിൽ. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ ഹെൽത്തിന് നല്ലൊരു കറിയാണത്. അവിയലും അതുപോലെ തന്നെയാണ്, ഹെൽത്തിന് പറ്റി അതിന് പുളിയും എല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്.
അവിയലിൽ എല്ലാ കഷ്ണവും വേണം. അതിനകത്ത് മുരിങ്ങാക്കായാണ് ഏറ്റവും ബെസ്റ്റ്. അതിനകത്ത് ഇങ്ങനെ ചീമ്പി വേവിക്കുക, അത് ഭയങ്കര സൂപ്പറാണ്.
Onam is a 10-day harvest festival that marks the first month of the Malayalam calendar and commemorates the return of the mythical king Mahabali from the underworld to his home in Kerala. His return is celebrated with floral artwork, traditional dances, boat races, and the Onam Sadhya. Vinayaka's Onam Sadhya costs around $3 per person, and the amount of food you can eat is unlimited. Throughout the meal, servers come around to tables, refilling hot rice in the center of the banana leaf and spooning out more dishes. While many Hindu communities in Kerala opt for a purely vegetarian meal, other Hindu, Christian, and Muslim celebrants, especially those in the northern part of the state, enjoy their Onam feast with prawn curry or beef fry. The meal concludes in the same way it begins, with a variety of sweet payasam puddings and a fragrant digestive pan.
ആ പായസം വരുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പഴം എടുക്കണം. ആ പഴം ഏത് പായസമായാലും വരുമല്ല, പായസത്തിൽ പഴം കുഴയ്ക്കണം.
പാലട അതിനകത്തേക്ക് ഒഴിച്ച് കഴിക്കുമ്പോഴല്ല അതൊരു പ്രത്യേക ഫീലാണ്. ഭയങ്കര സന്തോഷമാണ് അതിന്, അത്രയ്ക്ക് ടേസ്റ്റിയാണ്.
This is the Gurudwara Bangla Sahib temple in New Delhi, India. Open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, the temple's kitchen, or langar, feeds 35,000 to 40,000 people every day, for free. And on religious holidays, that number can swell to well over 100,000 people. At the heart of this entire operation is kitchen manager Habej Singh, who makes sure there is always enough to eat.
कभी भी कोई आए, कोई रात के 2 बजे आए, ऐसा दिन कोई नहीं रहा कि कोई बंगला साहिब से भूखा गया हो.
To keep up with demand, the kitchen uses specialized machines that can do everything from chopping vegetables and stirring stews to steaming the perfect dal. We visited the temple during a special holiday called Gurpurab to see how it makes a festive meal in such big batches. The day begins with making a type of sweet rice pudding called kheer, which is a special menu addition for Gurpurab. At the helm of the operation, is head chef Balbir Singh, who's been overseeing this process for years.
700 किलो की खीर बननी है जो पूरे दिन चलेगी.
Large bags of white rice are poured into metal bowls and washed by hand. 25 kilograms of the washed rice is then scooped into a massive pot of water and mixed by a mechanical arm.
एक कढ़ाई में हमारी 250 किलो दूध की खीर बन रही है इस टाइम, जो कि कम से कम जो क्वांटिटी है उसकी 300-400 किलो हो जाती है.
Once the pot has been filled with milk and it starts to boil, they pour in a large bag of wheat flour.
जो कंप्लीट 1 घंटे में तैयार हो जाती है हमारी खीर. अदरवाइज वैसे अगर हम तैयार करते हैं तो 2 से ढाई घंटे लगते हैं, लेकिन ये जब से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मशीनें हमारी चली हैं हमें बहुत सुविधा हो गई है, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा काम कम से कम टाइम में हो जाता है।
During the pandemic, the kitchen found itself needing to make more food with less stuff. The solution was to introduce pots that could automatically stir and cook most dishes in half the time.
तो ऐसा सिस्टम सेटअप किया है, अब 1 घंटे में हम 1 लाख आदमियों को लंगर भी प्रोवाइड करा सकते हैं। तो कोरोना काल में जैसे लंगर की ज़रूरत पड़ी, एक दिन में हमने 3.5 लाख लोगों को लंगर उनके घर तक पहुंचाया था।
While the kitchen has embraced technology for cooking, many of the vegetables the kitchen uses are still processed by hand. One of the most popular dishes the community kitchen makes is aloo matar, a curry dish made with potatoes, peas, and a creamy tomato sauce. Making this dish begins with heating vegetable oil in a pot as a base for the tadka.
जैसे घरों में ग्रेवी बनाते हैं उसी हिसाब से प्याज, टमाटर, अदरक, लहसुन प्लस उसके बाद मसाले, जीरा, काली मिर्च, देगी मिर्च, किचन किंग, कसूरी मेथी, वो सब डाल के कंप्लीट सब्जी तड़का तैयार किया है।
This is followed by baskets of potatoes, peas, and large ladles of tomato puree.
एक कढ़ाई में हम 200 किलो आलू और 60 किलो मटर डालते हैं, जो कि क्वांटिटी इसकी भी 300-400 किलो कंप्लीट बनती है बनने में।
When the dish is ready, chefs tip the pot and scrape everything out. Another curry dish the kitchen serves for the holiday feast is kadi chawal, which is made with a base of cumin, masala, and dried fenugreek leaves. When the base is mixed, chefs add gram flour and hung curd.
इसके अंदर हमारा 15 से 20 किलो बेसन लगता है और 30 से 40 किलो मतलब कि दही लगता है।
While the kadi mixes, chefs prepare the final part of the dish on the side. They mix spinach, onions, gram flour, and spices in a large pot to make pakodas or fritters. When they achieve the right consistency, the mix is then tossed into a wok and fried quickly. These fritters are then added into the curry.
ये मतलब ये भी 300-400 किलो इसमें कंप्लीट कड़ी बनती है।
Next up, the kitchen is making aloo gobi, a simple vegetarian dish made with potatoes and cauliflower. It starts with a tadka base of cumin, turmeric, and chili powder. Then the chefs add in baskets of cauliflower and potatoes. They mix everything together to evenly coat the veggies and continue stirring until they are finished cooking. An everyday staple on the langar's menu is fresh dal, or split lentils. Green, yellow, and brown lentils are all washed by hand daily and added into a pot full of water. The lentils are then seasoned with salt, chili powder, and turmeric and covered.
5 कुकर है हमारे पास, एक के अंदर 60 से 70 किलो कच्ची दाल बनती है। ये सारा ऑटोमेटिक है। जब दाल कंप्लीट हो जाती है ये बजर बजने चालू हो जाता है कि दाल कंप्लीट हो गई है। इसमें भी बहुत टाइमिंग कम लगती है, जैसे दाल को 2 से 3 घंटे लगते हैं, इसमें आधे से पौना घंटा लगता है। इतनी जल्दी बनती है और इतनी टाइमिंग कम लगती है ना कि जितनी संगत आ जाए, लाखों के हिसाब से संगत आती है, कभी लंगर की कभी कमी नहीं हुई। जिसको कंप्लीट बनने के बाद दाल 350-400 किलो होती है।
Across the kitchen, flatbreads are made using machines.
उसके बाद ये हमारी मशीन रोटी मेकर जो 1 घंटे में 2000 प्रसादे बनाती है और कंप्लीट ऑटोमेटिक है। सब कुछ इसमें पेड़े, आटा, सब ओनली आटा गूंदना पड़ता है हमारे को, गूंद के इसके अंदर डालेंगे। कटिंग, पेड़ा सब इसी ने करना है। उसके बाद ये देखो, ये रोटी कंप्लीट हो के अप डाउन 3 राउंड में बाहर रहती है.
While these machines make a majority of the bread the langar uses, there is another area of the kitchen dedicated to making these breads by hand. This is done so people can practice siwa, or self-love service, a tenet of Sikhism.
जो संगत आती है, जिनकी श्रद्धा होती है कि हमने भी गुरुद्वारा बंगला साहब में सेवा करनी है, तो वो यहाँ पे आके मैनुअल सेवा कर सकता है. 24 घंटे चलती है, जब भी किसी की श्रद्धा हो कर सकते हैं.
The langar officially opens its doors at 5 a.m. to serve food.
तो आप देखोगे गुरुपुरब का दिन है आज, गुरुपुरब चल रहा है और ये पूरी ऑल ओवर वर्ल्ड में मनाया जाता है. इसी तरह आज गुरुद्वारा बंगला साहब में भी मनाया जा रहा है, तो लाखों में लोग आएंगे.
Because of the kitchen's popularity, it's not uncommon for people to wait 2.5 hours outside to get a free meal. Inside the dining hall, visitors take their seats side by side in long rows known as pangats. This style of seating is an important part of the temple's philosophy of promoting equality and ending discrimination.
तो जहाँ पे राजा भी आए उसको भी उतना ही समानता दी जाती है और एक भिखारी को भी उतनी समानता दी जाती है.
Once everyone is seated, volunteers, known as sivadars, lead a religious chant in honor of the guru. Then the servers come around spooning large portions of food into metal plates. And while the amount of food one can eat is unlimited, there is a rule that not a single bite of food can be wasted, so plates must be cleaned before finishing the meal.
लंगर की खासियत तो यही है कि वो लंगर है, प्रसाद है, उसको आप एज ए मील नहीं ले सकते, ये एज ए गुरु का प्रसाद होता है और इसमें हर पार्ट ये बेस्ट है, कोई भी इसमें कोई कमी ना होती है ना होनी चाहिए और ये बेस्ट है, अपने में हर चीज़ अच्छी है.
When a batch of guests has finished eating, workers sweep and wash the floors before another group is allowed to enter.
और साफ़ सफाई का पूरा ध्यान दिया जाता है ताकि साफ़ सुथरा रहे. तो हमारी कोशिश यही रहती है कि सबको साफ़ सुथरा, हाइजीनिक और गर्म लंगर तैयार करके दिया जाए.
मैं बंगला साहब काफ़ी बचपन से आ रहा हूँ, लगभग 20-24 साल हो गए जितनी मेरी एज है. खाना साफ़ सुथरा था और काफ़ी आज क्या था कि नॉर्मली क्या होता है कि दाल चावल रोटी मिलती है नॉर्मली देखा जाए तो नॉर्मली डेज़ पे. बट आज क्या जैसे बैसाखी होती है, आज 31 भी है, तो आज गुरु की कृपा से हमें पनीर भी मिला, खीर भी मिली. और ये देखो कि ऐसा नहीं है कि स्पेशली कुक है कि एक ही बंदा आके बना रहा है, ऐसा नहीं है. कोई भी धर्म का बंदा आके कोई भी सेवा कर सकता है, उसकी मन में सेवा भावना होनी चाहिए. और सेवा से क्या होता है कि दिल में एक भावना जागती है उस अकाल पुरख के लिए, फिर हम उसके आगे फिर हमारा अंदर से बनता है.
Every week, these 3 chefs make 10,000 meals by hand. Working 10-hour shifts, the chefs use specialized cast iron and steel pots that can cook 800 servings at a time. Today, the kitchen is making 1,200 mapo tofu lunch boxes, and every meal comes with rice, crab egg soup, chili japchae, pickled radishes, cucumber and chive salad, stir-fried garlic scapes, and Chinese flour buns. It's a tall order, but worth the effort, according to head chef Hyo Chun.
물론 가끔 힘들 때도 있지만 고객님께서 맛있게 먹었다는 소리에 저희가 힘이 나고 열심히 하고 있습니다.
We visited Muka Doshirak to see how this kitchen prepares its lunchboxes in such big batches. The process begins at 4:30 a.m. when Ochun and his team start prepping ingredients for the day's menu. Chefs begin by washing and cutting 40 kilograms of white onions and 20 kilograms of green onions for the mapo tofu.
장난 아니게 너무 양파가 좀 많이 매운 편이라 이렇게 좀 많이 눈물을 흘려요. 지금 이만큼 요리사들이 좀 많이 힘들어요. 그 크기에 맞아야지 도시락에 들어가서 예쁜 모양을 낼 수 있기 때문에 그 크기로 자르고 있습니다.
Next, carrots are peeled, cut, and added into the same container as the white onions. Once the vegetables are prepped, it's time to start unpacking the tofu.
하루에 40판 정도 입고가 됩니다. 입고되는 걸 3명에서 재료 손질을 하고 있습니다. 이걸로 약 도시락 1,500개 정도 예상하고 있습니다.
The tofu is cut into cubes and loaded into metal trays, which are then wheeled into a large steamer.
아무래도 깨질 경우가 많으니까 저희가 쪄서 조리를 하게 되었습니다.
While the tofu is steaming, chefs start cooking the other ingredients for the dish in a large cast iron wok. They add red pepper oil and stir-fry the green onions and 10 kilograms of pork together until the meat cooks through. Chefs then add in the basket of white onions and carrots, as well as large ladles of doubanjiang, a savory Chinese bean paste made from fermented broad beans, chili peppers, and soybean. They season the mixture and add ladles of starch water to help adjust the consistency. Finally, once the tofu is done, it's drained and mixed into the wok using a metal shovel.
이 삽은 특수 제작된 삽이라서 뭐 땅을 파거나 그런 삽으로 이용되는 삽이 아니라 조리로 이용되는 삽으로 만들어져서 안전하고 드실 수 있습니다.
And that's not the only thing that's custom in the kitchen. Chefs use a special machine that supplies and drains water to wash about 120 kilograms of rice at a time.
쌀은 총 3번 씻고요. 기계는 21대가 있고요. 개수로. 그 다음에 약 900인분 정도. 네, 이렇게 나오고 있습니다. 한 솥에 50인분이 나오고요. 그 다음에 소요 시간은 밥이 전원을 누르고 동시에 30분 정도 뒤에 밥이 완료가 됩니다. 물 양은 쌀의 한 80% 정도 물 양을 맞추고 있습니다. 아무래도 80%다 생각하고 하면 부족하게 하기 때문에 저희가 손을 넣어서 그렇게 물을 잡고 있습니다. 물 양은 손의 손가락 끝나는 부분까지 저희가 물 양을 잡아서 그렇게 조리를 하고 있습니다.
The next order of business is making chili japchae.
고추 잡채에는 고기 20kg, 피망 10kg, 파프리카 20kg, 양파 10kg, 굴소스 3kg, 설탕 1kg, 그 다음에 후추 500g 이렇게 들어가고 있습니다. 고추기름에 고기를 볶다가 그 다음에 야채 넣고 센 불에 볶다가 가진 양념을 넣고 빠르게 마무리하면 됩니다. 고추 잡채 같은 경우에는 1시간 20분 정도 소요가 됩니다.
While the japchae cooks, chefs start prepping the cucumber and wild chive salad. 40 kilograms of cucumbers are sliced before being pickled.
절이는 이유는 고객들에게 음식이 갔을 때 물이 흥건하지 않기 위해서 저희가 절여서 지금 제공하고 있습니다. 음식을. 절인 다음에 물기를 완전히 제거하지 않으면 다시 물기가 생겨서 지금 완전히 물기를 제거한 후에 양념을 넣어서 버무려서 나가고 있습니다. 오이가 40kg, 달래가 10kg, 그 다음에 물엿 300g, 설탕 600g, 간장 600g, 그 다음에 멸치 액젓 100g, 참기름 100g, 네, 이렇게 들어가고 있습니다. 1시간 10분 정도 소요가 되고 있습니다. 지금 마늘쫑 깨무침을 준비하고 있어요. 그래서 지금 데치고 있는 중이고요. 네, 지금 데쳐서 지금 나오고 있는 상태입니다. 지금 꺼내서 간장 900g, 설탕 600g, 물엿 300g, 마늘 300g, 참기름 200g 이렇게 졸여서 전분 쳐서 같이 묻혀서 나가고 있습니다.
Next, the kitchen prepares crab egg soup.
게살 계란탕에 계란 20판, 게살 20kg, 그다음에 팽이버섯 20kg, 그다음에 참기름 200g, 굴소스 300g, 소금은 일단 게살 계란국에는 육수를 먼저 내고요. 육수에는 멸치, 디포리 이렇게 넣어서 육수를 볶고요. 끓으면 다 건져내서 안에 계란이랑 넣어서 농도를 먼저 잡고요. 전분은 농도 잡고 게살이랑 팽이버섯 이렇게 넣어서 마무리하고 있습니다. 게살 계란국은 끓이는 시간까지 포함해서 2시간 정도 소요가 됩니다.
For dessert, the chefs are reheating flour buns.
꽃빵 1000개 필요하고요. 꽃빵은 저희한테 냉동 상태로 입고가 돼서 다음날 기름에 튀겨서
Once fried, the buns will be drizzled with condensed milk and topped with almonds. When everything is cooked, employees fill small individual containers with rice and crab egg soup. And scoop portions of the other 6 dishes into a divided tray. Each of these lunchboxes cost 7,000 won, or about $5. After 10 hours of cooking and packaging, the lunchboxes are then put into insulated containers and delivered to offices around the city that have subscriptions.
안녕하세요. 도시락 왔습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 네, 맛있게 드세요.
뭐 전체적으로 다 괜찮은데 특히나 뭐 저는 마파두부 쪽이 괜찮게 느껴지네요. 아무래도 뭐 직장인들 고민거리야 뭐 매번 똑같겠지만 점심 뭐 먹는지가 제일 덜 수가 있고 이제 맛도 이제 퀄리티도 괜찮으니까 지속적으로 이용하고 있습니다.
신선한 재료로 다양한 반찬들을 맛볼 수 있는 게 좋고요. 그다음에 회사 생활할 때 나갔다 들어오는 거 귀찮은데 바로 점심을 배달해서 먹을 수 있다는 게 좋은 것 같습니다.
This is just a fraction of the 140,000 pizzas Grimaldi's makes every year. For the past 30 years, the Brooklyn-based pizzeria has stuck to classic recipes and kept a veteran team of pizzaiolos. Today, you'll find kitchen manager Tony Flugel and his team of pizzaiolos hand-stretching 500 pies a day, slicing 200 pounds of fresh mozzarella, and working a 1000-degree oven.
It's a series of marathons for us because we have to make sure that we're prepared for the next shift, the next day, the next week to keep up with the demand at the door.
We visited Grimaldi's flagship pizzeria in Brooklyn, New York, to see how it makes these pies in such big batches. At 9 in the morning, Tony and his team get started making a 33-year-old dough recipe. The mixer is loaded with olive oil, New York City tap water, activated yeast, and 50 pounds of high-gluten flour.
So we have it preset for 5 minutes. It's on a low spin cycle, okay? And what we do is we sprinkle salt on top of our flour. Five minutes later, we have our famous dough recipe.
Once mixed, the dough needs to be cut, weighed, and shaped into balls within 30 minutes, so it doesn't rise. For this, Tony relies on the most experienced pizzaiolos at Grimaldi's.
They're cutting each and everything to the same size every day. It's almost like muscle memory at this point where the scale's not even needed, you know? They know what they're doing, and it's almost like a healthy competition down here to race. Like, let's go, come on, keep up with me, I'm rolling. You gotta cut faster, let's go.
Another skill that's hard to master is rolling the perfect dough ball.
So we're rolling the dough and we're making sure that it's a smooth outer layer as well as making sure that there's no air inside. So for example, you know, if you're rolling it and you're just gonna meatball it and you're just gonna put it like this down, it's gonna rise and it's gonna thin out the middle. And then the pizza, when you pick it up, that's when it flops down. So Grimaldi is known for a nice hard layer crust that is the texture. It's the base. It's the most important thing to the pizza. It's, you know, the foundation to the house. No foundation, no pizza.
This batch of dough is enough to make 65 to 75 pizzas, which is just a fraction of what will be needed for the day. Once all of the trays are filled, they're taken across the hall to these fridges.
So this is only the dough that was made last night, okay? So this is getting ready for our first few hours in Grimaldi's, and then we'll start fresh, probably go through the first batch that we made today, and then as well as another 8 or 9 for the night shift.
In 2011, Grimaldi's moved into its current location. The double-story palazzo building at number 1 Front Street was originally built to be Brooklyn's first safety deposit company. Now, Grimaldi's fridges sit in the same place as the old vaults.
So I think that's really cool that we made them into our own vaults. So basically it protects our gold, and this is our gold right here.
Next, it's time to make the sauce. Large cans of San Marzano tomatoes are poured into buckets, topped with sugar, and blended.
For us, we use a 1-day shelf life, so we're just trying to keep it marinating for a few hours, if not a full day, and it's going right into our pizza. So we like to keep it as fresh as possible. It's nice, thick, and imported tomatoes.
Grimaldi's goes through about 700 quarts of tomatoes every week, or roughly 662.4 liters. Upstairs, 200 mozzarella balls are cut into thin strips, a process that's gone unchanged since opening.
The Grimaldi's cheese is very special. It's made only for Grimaldi's, so nowhere else in the world can get our flavor profile that we're doing on our mozzarella. It is a low moisture, low sodium, UV dried fresh mozzarella, so it can withstand the high intense heat of our oven and be cooked and melt to perfection in a short amount of time.
By the end of the week, Grimaldi's will hand slice around 2,000 pounds of mozzarella. An hour before opening, Grimaldi's restocks its coal so they can relight the oven.
Okay, so right now he's throwing 40-pound bags of anthracite coal into the bottom of our oven chute right over here. So we keep about anywhere from 10 to 12 bags down there at a time. And what we're doing is for at least a day or more, we try and dry out our coal to make sure that it's burning a little cleaner, easier. It's not popping from the inside, you know, on top of pizzas, etc. as it starts to heat up. It makes our stoking process and our oven heat up a little bit quicker too.
The pizzeria keeps embers in the brick oven overnight, so it stays warm.
So right now we have a grate inside of our oven. It's holding our coal up but he's right now flipping it and getting rid of all the old coal. The reason why we don't clean it out at nighttime because we want to make sure that it stays warm overnight because it's going to take too many hours to heat up our floor.
When the charcoal ignites, the team begins shoveling 200 pounds of coal into the side of the oven. Compared to wood, anthracite coal burns longer, hotter, and with less smoke.
You can't get a gas oven or a wood oven up to 1,000 degrees the way we can. So we're able to get a different, not only flavor profile from the coal, but we're also getting a different profile from the heat and intensity that pizza is going under.
When the doors open at 11:30 a.m., it's all hands on deck to fill orders. To be an official Grimaldi's pie, it needs to be made a certain way. Unlike most pizzerias, Grimaldi's built its pizza cheese first. Slices of mozzarella are evenly placed around the dough and the gaps are then filled with sauce.
So when it melts together, you're seeing a little bit of both, but you're also getting a bite of not too much sauce, not too much cheese. So that's what we're looking for with Grimaldi's.
Specialty toppings range from hand-pinched Italian sausage to thinly sliced prosciutto and artichokes. And most pies are finished off with a sprinkling of the Grimaldi's Romano blend, extra virgin olive oil, and a few pieces of fresh basil. To help streamline the cooking process, Grimaldi's uses a two-shelf system.
So we have a pre-stretch and then a stretching and cheese section on this side. We're pre-stretching cheese in, throwing them on the first shelf right here. Everyone standing on this side is a topper, so that means they're putting on the toppings, the sauce on, they're finishing it off with the olive oil, the basil, and then finishing it off by putting it on the top shelf. The top shelf is so the oven guy knows that they're ready to go in the oven.
Working a coal oven takes years of experience to master. From memorizing cook times to keeping a consistent heat, it's not easy to make a perfect pie.
So what we're doing is we're loading them in, we're closing the door right away, we're giving it a pop of heat to the bottom of the pizza so we can actually move it around without ripping it or anything like that. What's rare about Brooklyn is that we use this copper stick right here. You know, it's very important with this high heat. If you're using a wooden stick, they're just breaking and wearing and tearing and drying out non-stop, especially when you're picking up a heavy pizza. So you can see it's only been about 60 seconds and they're already rising up. So basically I'm making sure that I can pick them up, give them a small spin, and then I'm actually just moving them into position right here.
The high heat means that the pizzas only need a few minutes to cook. Water in the dough evaporates quickly, creating air bubbles and leaving behind a light, airy texture in the crust, while charcoal gives the pizza a charred, slightly smoky flavor and a crunchy texture. Outside, people begin queuing and waiting up to an hour to get a table. And 16 minutes after opening, the first and third stories of the restaurant are practically full. On the dining floor, you'll find servers with over 20 years of experience and a good sense of humor.
Oh, mommy, I'm hungry. Boom. You got it, Papa.
While Grimaldi's has an established clientele, a vast majority of its business comes from tour groups. Since 2005, Tony Muya, who runs pizza tours, has been coming to showcase Grimaldi's pizza.
So if I can describe Grimaldi's in 3 words, it would probably be legendary, authentic, and beloved, because people love Grimaldi's.
The key to making a great pizza is passion. It's love. You take dough, cheese, or sauce by itself, it's just simple objects. But when you're building a pizza, it's a piece of art. So for us, and for myself, it's the passion or love I put into every pizza that makes it special.
In less than an hour, everything inside of this tandoor oven will be sold out. These are samsas, a popular street food in Uzbekistan made of dough, meat, onions and spices. And here at Samsa Markazi in Namangam, Master Chef Kobajon Horfu Ogli Handamov and his team hand roll and cook 3,000 samsas every weekend.
Samsa biz uchun hozirgi kunda hunarimiz, ishimiz. anaroq hayotimizga bo'lib qolgan.
We visited Samsa Markazi to see how these famous snacks are made in such big batches. Making samsas for the weekend begins at 8 a.m. on Friday. Large bags of strong flour are poured inside a mechanical mixer and combined with oil and water. Markazi uses strong flour because of its high gluten content, which is helpful for holding ingredients inside, but not all flour passes the test.
Shuni unnimizni og'zini ochgandan keyin qo'lda ushaymizda, hech narsaga ishlamagan hali yangi unni qo'lda bitta siqib ko'rib turib aniqlaymiz, bo'ladi bo'lmaydi.
While the dough is being mixed, large chunks of beef and lamb are cut down into strips, then cubed and minced. Over the weekend, Kobo John and his team will cut up to 500 pounds of meat, a process that takes around 15 hours. They also prep eggplants, onions, green peppers, cilantro, tomatoes, and cucumbers. When the dough is ready, workers pull pieces into their hands and roll balls that they then slap on the table and roll flat. These shapes are what they'll use to wrap each samsa. And by the end of the weekend, the team will hand roll about 3,000 of them in various shapes and sizes. While Samsa Markazi makes 20 different varieties of samsas, one of its best-selling items is the deluxe samsa, a colossal meal that weighs close to 2 kilograms.
Salqam bu yarim qozon ovqat bo'ladi. Bir yegan odam ertalab yeb, shu bilan kechqurun choy ichib uxlaydi.
Head samsa chef Tokhir Haddamov starts making the deluxe samsa by adding beef into a large bucket, seasoning it with black and red pepper, salt and cumin, and mixing it with the pre-cut eggplant, onions, green peppers, cilantro, tomatoes, and cucumbers. He scoops and weighs 400 grams of the mixture before placing it on top of the dough, which has a quail egg in the center. He tops the mound with meatloaf, beef tongue, and horse meat sausage, which is locally known as kazi, before wrapping the entire thing into a neat rectangle. One of Markazi's other popular samsas is the Colson samsa, which literally translates into bowl samsa.
Hani 5-yilga tutdi. Hali bu pasayishi yo'q, o'sdi-ki, kamaygani yo'q. Hop, buni ichiga tushadigan mana birinchisi bedana tuxum. Hop. Endi buni ichiga tushadi. Yog'siz mol go'shti to'rg'amchi. Buni ichiga tushadigan go'sht 200 gram bo'ladi, mol go'shti o'zi. Yog'siz qora kesak go'sht bo'ladi. Ziravor tushadi, 30 gramga yaqin piyoz tushadi buni ichiga.
They then top the bowl with kazi.
Tayyor bo'ldi masalliqlar. Buning ustini xamir bilan qoplaymiz. Yegan odam sho'rvalari bilan ichida so'lli bo'lib chiqadi. Hech qayerga chiqib ketmaydi.
Markazi is also well known for its samsa with cheese.
Buni ichiga to'rg'amchi o'sha mol go'sht masalliq tushadi. 100 gram masalliq bo'ladi. Mana bu mol go'shti urib ichiga sir o'ralgan bo'ladi. Langet somsa deydi ko'p, sir bo'ladi ichida.
Peki aynan shunaqa turib yuradi bu?
Bu mana turishida ham mazali, ham ko'rinishi chiroyli, shirin chiqadi. Og'iz ochiq turgani hisobiga boshqa somsalarga qaraganda bu mazaliroq chiqadi.
When all of the samsas have been wrapped, they're placed on long wooden boards, coated with water and sprinkled with white and black sesame seeds, which give them a nutty finish. Workers then carry the boards outside, where Markazi's 9 tandoor ovens have been preheated with wood. Determining when these ovens are ready is done entirely by feel and experience.
Ichidagi cho'g'idan o'zi bilsa bo'ladi. Ko'proq bo'lsa issiqroq bo'ladi, ozroq bo'lsa sovuqroq bo'ladi. Issiqni shunday olamiz.
Unlike the conventional ovens used in the West, tandoor ovens retain heat for longer periods of time and require less fuel.
Tandir ketiga suv uramiz.
ketiga suvurib, sog'ini ko'rish uchun yana bir dona somsani olib yopishtirib olib ko'ramiz edi. Agar kuyib ketadigan bo'lsa, demak, issiq bo'ladi. Kuymagan bo'lsa, normalniy bo'ladi. Holatini shundan aniqlaymiz.
The kosa samsa takes about an hour to cook and is the first samsa to go inside of the oven. Bakers rub a small amount of water on each samsa before diving into the oven and sticking them to every square inch of the wall. Each of these ovens can hold around 150 samsas at a time. After about 20 minutes, the tops of the kosa samsas start to brown, and the oven is sprayed again with water before it's covered with a giant metal lid. The samsas are then steamed for another 20 minutes, but knowing when they're perfect takes a keen eye.
Somsa o'zi gapirib yuboradi, tandirda turgani gapirib yuboradi. Men tayyor bo'ldim deydi. Haqiqiy ustasi bittada anglaydi.
At 10 a.m., the first batch of samsas is ready to be served. The metal lid is removed from the oven and the samsas are scraped off of the tandoor walls into metal catchers. Cooks slice open the flaky tops of the kosa samsas and pour a hot veal tongue broth inside before serving them to customers. Hungry groups who want to pick their own samsas begin queuing an hour before opening, while other guests take a seat and have their samsas delivered to their table. Every samsa is enjoyed with a warm cup of tea, spicy tomato chili sauce, and cucumber tomato salad. The deluxe samsa, which is the largest and most elaborate, costs around $6. And while each samsa has a slightly different filling and shape, the most important parts of a good samsa are the crispy dough, juicy broth, and meat filling.
Samsa shu go'shtda, go'shti yaxsini olsa shirin bo'laveradi. Uniki ham o'zgacha, qovurg'aliginiki bizga o'z holicha yaxshiroq yoqdi. Go'shtlari yumshoq, shirin, mazali pishgan.
Har xil shu otli go'shti, qo'y go'shti, mol go'shti уже bir-biriga kirishib, mazasi o'zgacha. И сочный. Eng muhimi sochniyligi.
While it is now widely considered taboo in the US to eat horse meat, that wasn't always the case. Today, horse meat also remains popular in parts of Europe, Canada, and East Asia, including Japan, where it is considered a delicacy. Eating samsas is always a social event, and many people come to samsa restaurants like this multiple times a week.
Bir haftada bir 3-4 kelib turaman. Boshqa somsalardan farqi bor. Xo'p, yaxshi qiladi. Xo'p, muloyim. Ichidagi masalliqlari yaxshi. Shu sababli ko'proq shu yerga kelaman.
The samsa is believed to have been invented in the 10th century, when it was called the sambusak, a Persian word that refers to the triangular shape of the original samsa. Because of its portability, the samsa became a popular snack among merchants on the Silk Road. Through trade, it eventually made its way across the Middle East and into India in the 13th century. Here it evolved into the samosa, where it was no longer baked in ovens but fried in oil. While these differences remain, both countries share an absolute love for the handheld pies. This massive mound of dough is about to be cut, folded, and rolled into 2,100 croissants. A small portion of the 21,000 croissants Colson Patisserie makes every week. But making perfect croissants on this scale is easier said than done. For executive chef Natalie Abrams, it's a constant race against time and changing temperatures.
If our dough is mixed incorrectly, if it's overmixed, if it's undermixed, if it's mixed too warm, if anything goes wrong, you see it immediately.
We visited Colson Patisserie in Brooklyn, New York, to see how it prepares its croissants in such big batches. The day begins with making the dough. 5 gallons of milk and buckets of ice water are added into the mixer first.
And basically we adjust over the summer how much ice is going into that water. If it's in the dead of winter and the kitchen is freezing, then we maybe put the water a little bit warmer.
Keeping the dough cold is an essential part of slowing down the fermentation process. Next, an entire tray of wild sourdough starter is scraped into the mix.
It's wild yeast, basically. It helps our croissant grow a little bit bigger.
Finally, they add yeast.
And then we mix that around for a little bit to sort of combine, let everything start to bloom.
After a short spin, 250 pounds of flour is gradually added so it doesn't overwhelm the mixer and send flour into the air. They also add in a container of sugar and salt before continuing the mixing process.
And we mix maybe for another 2-3 minutes.
So here we're just starting to wait for a little bit of gluten development, and then we start adding butter, since that's sort of a hydrating thing and it inhibits gluten development. So that's why we hold that till the end of the mix.
And lastly, dough scrap or pâte fermentée is combined.
This helps as a flavor enhancer because it has a more mature flavor, and it also helps with shelf life.
Once the dough has been properly mixed, the entire mixer is lifted, so Natalie can easily transfer portions of dough to the prep table.
After the mix, we start to try and slow down any warmth or fermentation that happens. So we try and take it as fast as possible out of the bowl into the freezer to really sort of put a pause on the fermentation process.
The mixed dough is then cut, weighed, and wrapped as quickly as possible.
It's important that the starter that's going in doesn't have much of a chance to do much, that the yeast going in is all going to save all of its energy for the final bake. And so that's why we want to try and work as quickly as possible with this process, so that way we can get it cold, cold, cold.
When all of the dough is wrapped, it's carted into a blast freezer.
The dough is going to stay in here for about 2 to 3 hours until it's pretty solid, until we really are sure that we've stopped that fermentation from the heat. And then we're going to move it into the fridge, where it is going to stay overnight to relax, let the flavor develop a little bit, and hydrate all of the dough.
In another room, workers begin unwrapping mountains of butter.
And we use a European style 83% Vermont butter. We love it in terms of taste. We've tasted a bunch of other stuff, but this for us has been the main ingredient for some of our biggest flavors. This will get us through about a day and a half worth of croissant production just for the actual sheets that we want to put inside.
All of this batter needs to be layered with dough, but instead of rolling it out into sheets, Colson uses a hydraulic press.
We get it to temp, then basically it goes into a hydraulic press, so it becomes pliable but not warm. We want the butter and the dough to be as even in temperature as possible, so that's why we have to basically use what we pressed out of the butter the same day, so that way we know that our temperature is close.
The relaxed dough is now ready to be stretched and layered with these sheets of butter in a process known as lamination. First, the dough needs to be stretched to the same thickness and width as the sheet of butter, so it can be completely folded over.
So basically here, we just take our butter that's like a little pliable, but not soft, and we're going to just make sure that all of the dough has a layer of butter. This is called the lock-in stage. And then after this, we begin putting in our series of folds.
After the folds, each sheet will have 24 layers of dough and butter, and it's these layers that will give the croissants their honeycomb interior and flaky texture when baked. But if the temperature is off at any stage, they risk losing the entire batch.
If you have butter that is too cold, then the butter shatters, and then you'll see little bits and pieces of butter throughout the dough, and you won't have any layers. If you have dough that is too cold, it rips. If it's not laminated correctly, if the butter is broken, then it comes out with 50 or 60 croissants that we can't really use.
When the dough has been laminated, it's wrapped and stored in a proofer at 55 degrees for a few hours. At this temperature, the dough and batter remain pliable without fermenting, which is essential for the next step. Now it's time to stretch the laminated pieces of dough. For this step, the bakery uses an automatic sheeter that stretches and cuts the dough into triangles.
So we have about 7 kilos of dough here, which is about 14 pounds. Each one of those makes about 60 croissants. And so every day we're going through approximately 60 to 70 of these laminated pieces of dough. So we have a specific program for all of our different croissants. It helps us maintain consistency. This passes through about 7 times. And then here we have some of the scrap dough coming off of the sides, and then all of our triangles are ready. Even though they're very close here to being super duper consistent, we still are weighing each piece that we make to make sure that we have everything coming out at exactly pretty much the same weight. We have about a 3-gram spread on all of our croissants, which means that all of our 3,000 croissants come out around the same size, the same shape, because croissants really show every single imperfection or perfection.
The triangles are then ready to be rolled into their crescent shape.
So after the dough has been weighed, we basically straighten out to make a nice straight triangle. We give it a little bump to give it a place to sort of live. And then we have a nice 1-2 motion where we basically put the croissant right in its home. So after that, it gets moved to the tray and we give it a nice little tap. You kind of have to tap all your croissants to show them that you love them.
The rolled croissants are then left to rest for another 8 to 10 hours and proofed for another 5 to 6 hours. But even at this step, slight changes in temperature can ruin the entire batch. Before the croissants are baked, Natalie gives each of them a squeeze to make sure they're proofed enough.
If it feels tight here, then we let them go for a little bit longer. If it feels pretty even, then we know that we're good to go on the proof. Some of them that you can see got a little close to the oven while they were proofing, and so we have a couple that the butter just started leaking out because they got a little too warm, but that's how sensitive these croissants are. Like, if it's a slight, like 6 inches too close to an oven, then it's probably just gonna have to go to staffed meal, because you're gonna see it when it comes out, that it's gonna have sort of that butter underneath. That means there's less butter in the croissant.
Here, Natalie is finishing off each croissant with a coat of vegetable spray.
So it's like a vegetable protein that does a very nice job of still giving us that color and shine.
The loaded rack is then carted into this massive oven.
So this is our oven that's programmed with our croissants recipe. We have everything sort of set up for, again, maximum consistency on the bake. It can adjust the venting, it can adjust steam, and it can decrease our temperature as needed.
Inside, the oven can bake 360 croissants at a time.
And that raises, lifting the cart off the ground, and then once I hit start bake, it starts rotating this rack around for the most even bake possible. And sort of the hot air is coming out of convection vents that line this entire side. And so again, all of those are adjusted individually. I think there's about 200 or something to adjust for the perfect airflow to make sure that the bake from top to bottom on the oven is happening in a very even way.
After about 25 minutes, the baked croissants are taken out and left to cool.
So normally, you stand back when we open this, let the steam out a little bit.
If they're packed too soon, the center of the croissant will collapse.
If you're really paying attention, it shows you everything that's happened in terms of like all the attention to detail, all the technique that has gone into it.
While most of these croissants are headed to wholesale customers, Colson also sells some of his croissants at 2 cafes.
Our goal is really just to like have all of these multitudes of customers who are walking into different shops across New York walk away with a pastry that they're happy with and that they find some joy in, and then make everybody's day a little better.
The croissants are to die for. They look just beautiful. They're art. They're a piece of art, first of all. But just the flakiness, how they crumble into your mouth.
They are so good.
And reactions like this are exactly what motivates Natalie.
You can have a really beautiful croissant, but if the flavor isn't there, then kind of what's the point? I would much rather draw people in with flavor and have them keep coming back than have something that everybody buys once.
This team of bakers makes around 1,200 trays of baklava every week. And Master Chef Mehmet Akıncıoğlu has to pay careful attention to every step of the process.
Ufak bir şeyden baklava olur mu, heder olur mu? Oluyor yani. Olur yani. Usta bir baklavacı olmak 5 ile 10 yıl arası değişir.
We visited Akıncıoğlu Baklava to see how it makes its baklava in such big batches. The day begins at 5 a.m., making the daily dough. Hard wheat flour, water, eggs and salt are added into a mechanical mixer and combined for 20 to 25 minutes. Once soft, the dough is taken out, cut, weighed and kneaded into small discs that are left to rest for another 20 to 25 minutes.
Beklemedikten sonra da hamurun belli kıvamı, o beklediği kıvamı bulduktan sonra da makine bölümüne geçiyoruz.
The discs are loaded into the dough sheeter and run back and forth to flatten and elongate them.
Tabii bu makineyi kullanmak da ayrı bir şey. Sağ ve sol şeylerini yaparaktan sağa sola gitmesini yapıyoruz. Aynı şekilde burada derecesini yaparaktan da incelmesini sağlıyoruz hamurumuzun. Hamurumuzu belli dediğimiz derece inceliğe geldikten sonra da elle alıp oklavaya sarıp döşeme bölümüne alacağız.
Here, chefs roll 10 to 15 sheets of dough at a time and generously coat them in starch so they don't stick together.
Burada açılan oklava da çok önemli. Şöyle söyleyeyim, bu oklava alet malzemesi çok şeydir. Meşe veya dut odunundan olması gerekir. Sertliğini, eğilmemesi, düzgünlüğünü muhafaza etmesi için çok önemli bir açım aletidir bu da yani.
Every sheet of dough is rolled until it's paper thin.
Hamur ne kadar ince olmalı? Hamur ne kadar ince olursa o kadar baklavadaki hışırlığı ve lezzeti, o görüntüyü, parlaklığı daha iyi alırsınız. Onun için zar gibi dediğimiz, tabir ettiğimiz veya kağıt gibi dediğimiz tabir olması gerekiyor. O şeyi yakaladığımız zaman tamam diyoruz yani.
The thinly rolled dough is then brought to a table to fill each pan.
İçeride çekmiş olduğumuz hamurlar açıldıktan sonra işte buraya, bu bölüme gelerekten bu şekilde gelen hamurlarımızı taban bölümünü bu şekilde döşüyoruz. Döşeme yapıyoruz. Bu hamurun ölçütü yok. Ne kadar inceltilebilirse incelmesinde fayda varsa. Bundan sonra da gördüğünüz gibi elimiz dahi gözükecek derecede incelmiş durumda. Bu tabi bunu inceltmek de ustaların marifetini gösteriyor, gerektiriyor. Ne kadar da incelirse o kadar hamurun baklavamız kışır ve güzel olur. 15, 16, 17 kat kadar hamur döşüyoruz. Tepsi nebatlarına göre değişiyor bu tabi. Daha sonra süt kaymağı dediğimiz imritle yapmış olduğumuz kaymağı bir kat tabanına yatırıyoruz. Daha sonra ise
Next, a mountain of special buds pistachios is added into the tray.
Bu fıstığın özelliği ağaçta daha tam olmadan, yani ağaçta fıstık tam dolgunlaşmadan toplanmış olmasıdır. Toplamdan dolayı bu ağaçta fıstık taze ve daha genç bir şekilde elde ediliyor. Ve dolayısıyla çekildiği zaman bu fıstık müthiş bir reha, müthiş bir koku elde ediyorsun bu fıstıkla.
All of the pistachios Mehmet uses are harvested locally and picked within 10 to 15 days of sprouting.
Daha sonra olursa fıstık dolgunlaşıyor. Dolgunlaşırsa o içerisindeki dediğimiz o rehayı, o şeyi, o yeşilliği, o rengi alamıyoruz fıstıktan.
The pistachios are topped with another 15 to 20 layers of dough before they are taken to the slicing section. Here, Mehmet and his team add the final layers of dough to the top of the baklava and laminate each layer with melted butter. As with the pistachios, Mehmet carefully selects his butter from sheep that have been grazing on mountain plants. To retain its flavor, the butter is melted with steam.
Belli ısıya geliyor. Isı ne fazla olacak ne az olacak. Eğer fazla olursa baklavamızın yüzü çökük olur. Az olursa da yine baklavamız kabarmaz. Yani kabardığı kabarıklığı elde edemeyiz. Ve şu an tekrar bu dilim işlemlerine başlayalım. Ver Abdullah. Bunu da tekrar yüzlüğünü çekerken süpürgenin ucunu batırıyoruz. Çekiyoruz. Bunları da böyle bu hamurumuzun açılırken en ortak kısmı, ince kısmı, en kıymetli yeri. Onun için bunu da en üstüne atıyoruz.
Once the last layer of dough is applied, bakers cut the excess and slice strips across the tray. Then they coat the tray in another layer of butter and cut it again into its famous diamond shape. The baklava is now ready to bake. Mehmet uses a traditional stone oven fueled with oak wood to cook the baklava.
Derecesi de yine modern dereceler var ama biz yine eski usul ustalarımızdan gördüğümüz elimizi içimize sokaraktan, bakaraktan, sayaraktan şey yapabiliyoruz. Yoksa da normal eski usul de var, yeni derece de var. Yeni derecelerle söyleyecek olursak da bu 270-280 derecelerde baklavamız pişiyor.
Each tray bakes for 25 to 35 minutes depending on the style of the baklava and how thick it is. Once cooked, the baklava rests for up to 40 minutes. The baked baklava is placed on a burner to get the bottom crispy. When it achieves the right color and consistency, it's time to sweeten the dish. But if there's not enough sugar, the baklava will be too soft and dry. And if there is too much, it will lack the right crispness and flavor.
Son aşamada şekeri gevşek verdiğiniz zaman baklava hamurla hamursuz oluyor. Sert verdiğiniz zaman sert bir lezzeti, istediğiniz lezzeti alamıyorsunuz. Bu şekerin tam olup olmadığını buradan bakaraktan anlıyoruz. Eğer iyiyse tamam, değilse de tekrar biraz su ilave ederekten şey yapıyoruz. Devam ediyoruz. Baklava lezzettir, baklava aşktır, baklava göz nurudur, emektir. Dünyanın en lezzetli tatlısıdır.
After 3 hours of prep and cooking, the baklava is ready to eat.
Her tepsiden, yani normal bir 3 kiloluk tepsiden bahsedecek olursak, yani 25-30 porsiyon gibi çıkar yani.
It's believed that baklava was adapted from a savory layered pastry known as börek, which was popular across Central Asia in the 11th century. Over time, it's believed that it was combined with the Arab practice of soaking pastries and donuts in honey or sugar syrup. Some of the earliest mentions of baklava in Turkey come from the 1400s. It was enjoyed by sultans during the Ottoman Empire and remains a popular dish among locals today.
Hamurunun doğallığı, orijinal fıstık kullanmaları ve yağının çok kaliteli olmasından dolayı buraya baklava yemeye geliyorum. Tatlı hayatımda önemli bir yere sahip, çok severim.
Buranın bölgesinden olduğu için hamuru olsun, fıstığı olsun, lezzeti başka şehirde bulamazsın buradaki lezzeti. Değişik şehirlere git, bu lezzeti buradaki lezzeti orada bulamazsın. Antep baklavasının özelliği çıtır çıtır diye ses gelir ve ağzında dağılır, hoş bir tat bırakır.
Onun için bizim işimiz, bizim mesleğimiz, bizim sanatımız çok hassas, çok ince bir özveri gerektiriyor, çok dikkat gerektiriyor. Tabii ki ekip olması gerekiyor. Her alanda çalışan arkadaşların bu özveriyi, bu işten gelme duygusunu yapması gerekiyor. Yoksa bu istenilen lezzeti, istenilen tadı yakalayamıyoruz yani. Baklava yaparken en önemli öğrendiğim ders işini severek yapmak.
Every weekend, Samgeori Farms in Damyang County, South Korea, cooks 1,700 pounds of chicken and vegetables inside of their 40 wood-fueled woks. The final result? Dakbokkeumtang, a spicy chicken stew full of potatoes, onions and carrots, and a secret chili sauce.
사실 힘든데 재밌는 부분이라고 하면 손님들이 맛있게 드실 때 제일
We visited Chef Kim Chong-gu and his crew of 21 cooks to see what it takes to make dakbokkeumtang in such big batches. Cooking this dish begins at 9 a.m. on Saturday. Workers coat the tops of 20-kilogram iron woks with soybean oil and add handfuls of dried oak into the base of the grills.
저희가 주말에 사용하는 장작의 양은 1.5톤 트럭 2대 이상 사용하고 있습니다. 처음에는 손으로 팼는데 장작을 지금은 기계로 하고 있습니다.
When the grills are ready, workers use propane torches to light the wood on fire. After 5 minutes, the woks reach their optimal temperature and an entire bucket of the dakbokkeumtang mixture is poured inside.
사실 저희 가게 닭볶음탕의 가장 어려운 부분은 불 조절이죠. 예. 가스불이 아니고 장작으로 하다 보니까 이제 불 조절 너무 세면 이제 불을 살짝 빼기도 하고 이제 장작이 다 타면 이제 좀 이렇게 봐가지고 장작을 넣어서 일정하게 불 유지를 하는 것이 좀 어렵기는 하죠. 장작으로 하다 보니까.
While maintaining the wood fire is challenging, it's worth the flavorful payoff.
참나무를 사용하는 이유는 참나무가 화력이 제일 좋고요. 두 번째는 훈제 향이 참나무가 가장 뛰어납니다.
Oak wood has a smokier flavor than apple and cherry wood, but a lighter taste compared to hickory and mesquite woods. It also burns at a high temperature without emitting too much smoke. Even though this dish is cooked on high heat, it still takes a while to cook.
이제 소종닭을 사용하다 보니까 좀 조리 시간이 길거든요. 한 40분 정도? 그래서 저렇게 처음에 한 통을 이렇게 붓고 이게 40분 정도 조리를 하면 이제 이렇게 쫄아들어요. 이제 졸여지면 이제 그때 이제 대파, 양파, 야채 넣어서 이제 손님한테 나가거든요.
Thinly cut onions are added into the wok and cooked for a minute. At 11 a.m., the first batch of dakbokkeumtang is ready to be served. Workers wheel the woks out to the customers' tables and scoop the stew into metal bowls. And a single order costs around $55.
닭볶음탕 저는 다리살을 좋아하고요. 그 다음에 들어간 야채들도 고구마라든가 당근이라든가 양파라든가 되게 아삭하게 맛있어서 좋았어요.
제가 어렸을 때부터 다른 고기보다 닭고기를 좋아했는데 그렇게 되다 보니까 자연스럽게 닭볶음탕을 좋아하게 됐어요.
감자, 고구마, 야채류를 많이 좋아하고 고기는 뭐 닭가슴살 부위를 좋아하죠.
Samgeori Farms opened 3 years ago, and since then, business is centered around one dish. Preparing for a weekend of cooking starts early in the morning, cutting vegetables and chicken in the kitchen.
저희는 당일날 이제 재료 준비를 하고 있고요. 근데 뭐 그중에 가장 큰 이유라고 말씀드리자면 신선한 재료를 사용하고 싶은 욕심에 이제 당일날 준비하고 있고요.
The restaurant uses around 600 sweet potatoes, and carrots every weekend, along with 1,000 green onions.
쓸게요. 고구마는 닭하고 같이 이제 처음 조리할 때 들어가거든요. 그래서 좀 크게 썰고 있어요. 너무 작게 썰면 이제 다 익어서 없어지거든요. 그래서 당근도 처음부터 들어가는 거여서 좀 크게 쓸게요. 닭이랑 같이.
But the most important part of the dish is the locally sourced chicken.
닭볶음탕 가게다 보니까 이제 주 재료인 닭은 한 200마리 정도. 저희는 토종닭을 사용하고요. 토종닭은 일반 닭보다 조금 질겨요.
Once the chicken and vegetables have been chopped and added into the buckets, it's time for the most important part of the dish, the secret seasoning.
양념에는 기본적으로 고춧가루, 고추장, 뭐 와인, 아까 레드 와인도 들어가는 뭐 이것저것 이제 들어가고 있습니다. 네, 저희 가게만의 비법이다 보니까 다 말씀드릴 수는 없고요. 양념장 넣을게요.
The bright red gochugaru and gochujang paste help create the dish's signature color and spicy red pepper flavor, while the red wine helps get rid of the meaty smell.
이제 물을 담을 거거든요. 물을 담아서 밖에 이제 소뚜껑, 아까 보셨던 큰 소뚜껑에다가 이제 저희가 육수도 하고 뭐 이것저것 해봤는데 사실 깔끔하게 그냥 저희는 물을 사용하고 있어요. 처음부터 오픈하고 처음부터 장사가 좀 잘 돼가지고 그때부터 이렇게 좀 대량으로 시작하게 됐습니다.
Dakbokkeumtang has been a staple of Korean cooking since the 20th century, following the mass production of poultry in the country. And while chicken might be a fairly new ingredient, the famous red chili has been grown and eaten in Korea for over 1,000 years. The stew used to be called Dakbokkeumtang, containing the Japanese word for chicken, dori. The National Institute of Korean Language decided to change it to Dakbokkeumtang, literally translating to stir-fried chicken soup. Today, it's typically served with white kimchi, cucumber pickles, and chive pancakes. And in some cases, there is a bonus at the end. At Samgeori Farms, when most of the dish has been served, the remaining sauce is pushed back into the center of the wok. Ramen noodles are added in and enjoyed, so nothing goes to waste.
저희 가게 닭볶음탕의 맛의 비결은 특허받은 양념 소스에 있다고 생각합니다. 특별한 건 없고요. 네. 손님분들이
Every weekend, Saul Torres and his crew make and sell 500 pounds of lamb barbacoa to nearly 1,200 people.
Y aquí mi trabajo, pues no es tanto un trabajo, es algo que me gusta hacer.
Wrapped inside long maguey leaves and slow roasted for 11 hours, this lamb barbacoa is legendary for its tenderness and its sweet and smoky flavors. We visited Saul at his restaurant, El Pica Uno in Texcoco, Mexico, to see how this dish is prepared and what it takes to make such big batches.
Hay muchas barbacoas, barbacoa de pollo, barbacoa de res, pero nosotros estamos enfocados en que es la barbacoa de borrego. Texcoco es muy famosa de barbacoa. Es donde, pues prácticamente voy a repetir, donde se encuentran todos los implementos, complementos para hacer una buena barbacoa.
Making enough barbecue for the weekend begins at 8 a.m. on Friday. Saul and his team begin preheating the 11 pit ovens by adding large cuts of wood into the bottoms and stripping pieces of cardboard for kindling. Using a lighter, they set the pieces of cardboard on fire and place them into the centre of the wood. When the flames reach the top of the oven, they start offloading fresh maguey leaves and placing them across the ovens. The agave leaves are roasted until they become more flexible. Meanwhile, another team offloads 500 pounds of lamb and places it into the meat prep area. Using a machete, they cut down the larger pieces so the meat can better fit inside of the 3-foot wide oven. All of the ovens El Pica Uno uses are preheated for 7 to 8 hours, but knowing when the oven is ready is based entirely on feel.
Lo que más tiempo lleva aprender es tener el horno a la capacidad que requiere para poder echar un horno. O sea, tenemos que visualizar. No tengo así algo muy concreto para decirte, sabes que este horno ya tiene.
When the oven is ready, the remaining pieces of wood are removed and a smouldering pile is left at the bottom. Workers then take the pre-roasted maguey leaves and line the ovens. These leaves contain a sap, which will infuse the meat with a sweet, smoky flavour when combined with the wood embers.
Trabajamos 36 pencas, 36 hojas de maguey. Aproximadamente son 2 capas y media de... Son 2 capas y además buscamos la fuga para poner una capa, para que no se dore la barbacoa, la carne.
Once the oven has been wrapped, a large steel pot filled with chickpeas, guajillo chilies, secret spices and water is lowered into the bottom.
Le ponemos en la parte de abajo ya una olla donde va a caer el jugo de la carne, que es el consomé.
They then place a metal grill on top of that pot to hold the stack of meat inside the oven.
La favorita es el espinazo, el curvo, que lo que es el cuello, o la espaldilla. Es lo más suavecito que hay, que es esta pieza, es el cuello. Nosotros trabajamos 11 hornos y un promedio de 40 borregos al fin de semana. En cada horno más o menos aproximadamente 3 borregos caben por horno, 3 borregos más o menos.
When the oven is full, the maguey leaves are folded over the meat and a large metal lid is placed on top and sealed using wet mud and sand.
Para que automáticamente la barbacoa se cose a base de vapor.
The barbecue is left to cook overnight for 11 hours, braising in its own juices and fat. Underneath, the consommé helps steam and infuse the meat with flavour while collecting fat drippings. By morning, the team at El Pica Uno will have a rich consommé to serve alongside the smoky, sweet lamb barbacoa.
Tiene un sabor así como de leña, de humo, por decir. Y le ponemos la penca, la que es la hoja de maguey, y se complementa un sabor inexplicable, muy rico. Tiene que ver mucho en el borrego, seleccionar el animal correcto y darle un buen cocimiento, darle una buena cocción a esa carne, donde quede una textura muy rica.
They start serving the barbacoa at 7:45 a.m. the next day.
A las 8 por muy tardar, ya llega la gente a empezar a consumir la barbacoa, porque llegan cruditos, como lleguen, ya empiezan a consumir su barbacoa.
Using 2 plates, workers dive headfirst into the oven, scooping large pieces of tender lamb into plastic-lined boxes. The meat is sold for about $10 per pound, and customers can choose the cuts they want.
La gente, al cliente le gusta cómo sale directamente del hoyo. La barbacoa ya es tradición. Es un platillo pues prehispánico, por decir. Nosotros estamos manejando todavía el tipo de barbacoa que se maneja hace añísimos. Todavía está con tabique rojo, con lodo, como lo acaban de ver ustedes.
The word barbecue originated with the Taino people of the Caribbean, who used a wooden platform set over a fire to cook their meat. And barbacoa, which directly translates to barbecue, has been cooked in pit ovens in Mexico for more than 500 years.
Yo vengo de una familia que empezó hace 54 años a trabajar la barbacoa, que es mi papá. Y pues imagínate, yo tengo 48 años, prácticamente pues tengo toda una vida con ellos en este bendito negocio. Y lo que ha mantenido al Pica es eso, ¿no? El que ustedes mismos pueden ver cómo sale la barbacoa, qué piezas gustan y adelante poderla consumir en un lugar muy agradable, que ya son las instalaciones que tenemos hoy. Una buena barbacoa tiene que llevar una buena salsa. Con una buena salsa y una buena tortilla, mira, te digo que se me hizo agua la boca de la barbacoa.
Inside Al Pica Uno, customers buy the consommé to dip their meats into, and vendors sell other condiments and tortillas to complement the barbecue.
Entonces, cuando tú agarras tu barbacoa, no nomás es de agarrarla y comerla, ¿no? Te encuentras en un lugar tranquilo, hospitalario, con gente noble, con gente sencilla de aquí del negocio. Mucha gente le pone su limoncito, le pone su cebollita, le pone sus especies, por decir. Pero una buena barbacoa no hay más que ponerle salsa y una buena tortilla de comal. Con eso. O sea, a la hora que tú das, te voy a repetir, das la mordida a la barbacoa, al taco, se rompe prácticamente. Y la otra, pues le tira un jaloncito.
Esta barbacoa es especial porque es de hoyo. Me gusta llegar al primer hoyo que abren, el que mi familia vea esta parte de cómo se maneja el tema en provincia para cuando lo abren, el sabor, que tiene mucha diferencia entre lo cotidiano en la ciudad, ¿no? No, gracias porque existe este lugar. La verdad es de que a mí me da tranquilidad, qué bueno que no hay red otra vez, aleja toda esa parte de lo que hoy vive la ciudadanía.
Todo, su atmósfera, su gente, su hospitalidad, su comida, especialmente la barbacoa. Y bueno, ya desde llegar aquí, ya es como algo mágico, es un lugar mágico.
Even though El Pica Uno usually sells out of its lamb barbacoa every weekend, the restaurant has no plans to cook more than 500 pounds.
Tuvimos una publicidad muy grande y llegó bastante gente, pero desgraciadamente ya no tenemos dónde meter a la gente. O sea, nos saturamos muchísimo. De poder podemos meter mucho más barbacoa, pero ya también vamos a dar un servicio que no podemos llegar a su alcance. Pues no es suerte, no es trabajo, ser constantes, y hasta hoy hemos llegado a tener todo lo que se ha logrado de un gran trabajo.
Over 160 kilograms of meat, vegetables and rice go into this massive pan to make one of the biggest paellas in Spain. But this paella is just half of what Vicente Martinez and his team are making for Quesa, Valencia's festival of the Reserve. At the end of the day, these paellas will feed more than 1,000 people, all for free. But the size of this paella isn't the only thing that's special. It also has a unique ingredient that makes this paella distinctly Valencian. So, what does it take to make paella in such big batches?
Pues llevo más de 30 años en la empresa a cocinar paellas gigantes por todo el mundo. Soy Vicente Martínez y estamos cocinando aquí una paella de 1.400 raciones para las fiestas populares del pueblo de Quesa.
This is known as the Festival of the Reserve. On the morning of the festival, Vicente and his crew offload and wheel two 2.35-meter paella pans into the town square. When the pans are secure, they get to cooking.
Lo primero que pongo en la paella es el aceite y luego se nivela y ya luego se prende fuego y la carne para sofreírla.
Each paella is cooked with 8.5 liters of olive oil, 75 kilos of chicken, and 30 kilos of rabbit.
Pues estamos sofriendo la carne para dorarla bien doradita, como verás esa ya está. Se sofríe en el centro y luego vamos cambiándola, así se sofríe toda la carne perfecta.
When the meat is done, 40 kilos of frozen green beans, butter beans and white beans are added into the mix, along with 5 kilos of snails.
Los ingredientes que se utilizan son los típicos de Valencia, de la huerta de Valencia. El pollo, el conejo y las verduras son típicas de Valencia. En cada zona se guisa de una manera, pero la base siempre es el pollo, el conejo y las verduras, lo que es la judía verde y el garrofón.
Once everything is mixed together, 135 liters of water are added into the pan.
Lo que te lleva un poco loco, si tú quieres, es el agua. La cantidad de agua es lo que te puede llevar un poco más loco, porque como trabajamos con leña, la leña, dependiendo de si está más seca, más húmeda, si quema más rápido o menos rápido.
After the water has been added, 60 kilos of a local medium-grained rice called arroz redondo is tossed into the mix. Cooking with wood means that the water and fire need to be constantly monitored so that the rice doesn't burn.
Es un plato bastante difícil de cocinar para la gente que no lo ha hecho nunca, sobre todo porque se hace a leña. De hecho, verás que muchos chefs rehuyen de cocinar arroz.
In Spain, bomba, albufera and redondo rice are commonly used because they can absorb more liquid and flavor than regular rice without getting mushy.
Pues la paella, como se dice ahora, es una explosión de sabores, carnes, de verduras, el arroz absorbe esos sabores y es una delicia.
Paella pans often come in several diameters, but the general shape is always wide, shallow and round with sloping edges. This shape is important because it helps the rice cook evenly in a single layer.
Cada vez el arroz está más reposado y mejor. Todos queremos ser los primeros, pero cuando mejor está la paella es al final.
And many Spaniards agree.
Carraos es esa parte de arroz que se pega un poquito entre la paella y el arroz que está así. Y eso lo rascas un poquito y queda de muerte con el resto de arroz.
While everyone enjoys paella, the exact ingredients for what constitutes a true paella is still hotly debated.
A ver, hay arroces y paellas. Paella es la valenciana, punto.
While the festival is full of joy and celebration today, the origins of its birth are much darker. In 1690, Quesa experienced a devastating outbreak of the bubonic plague, which left only a few members of a single family alive. Resilient, the surviving family gave shelter and food to anyone who moved back to Quesa.
Para conmemorar ese hecho de que la gente volvió a nuestro pueblo y Quesa volvió a nacer, pues símbolo de nuestra hospitalidad como pueblo, pues hacemos 2 paellas gigantes y entregamos el panecillo para repartir a todo el mundo que quiera venir a visitarnos.
Paella is thought to have come from farm workers in Valencia, who used shallow pans to cook rice over wood fires and added in ingredients they could forage or hunt to create a cheap but filling one-dish lunch. Over time, the elites of Spain started to enjoy paella for weekday lunches, and it became more popular across the country. And while paella is now recognized as a traditionally Spanish dish, it wouldn't be what it is today without the introduction of rice by the Moors in the 12th century. Since then, paella has taken on many iterations across Spain, but the classic ingredients of rice, rabbit, snails, and beans remain integral for making a Valencian paella.
Es un lujazo tener a estas personas que nos hacen unas paellas increíbles, de buenas y de sabrosas y abundantes, de todo.
Pues para mí la paella significa el mejor plato que se puede comer una persona. Yo llevo más de 30 años y no me he cansado de comer paella.
Mi parte preferida de este evento es que te puedes juntar con todos los colegas, con los padres y disfrutar de una buena comida junto a todos ellos.
Siempre te falta algo para decir esta paella es de 10. Puedes decir es de 9, es de 9,5. Nunca puedes decir que es la paella de 10.
There are 200 eggs in every batch of this famous Indian street food. Chef Mohammed Nasir can make up to 10 batches per day. That's 2,000 eggs. Egg Bhurji is India's take on spicy scrambled eggs. It's a specialty of the Indian state of Maharashtra. We visited Pav Bhaji and Bhurji Center in Mumbai to find out how this dish is made and see just what it takes to make such big batches. It begins by finely dicing tomatoes, onions and cilantro. For a daily portion of Egg Bhurji, this stall uses and chops approximately 88 to 110 pounds of tomatoes, 66 to 88 pounds of onions, and 10 to 15 bunches of cilantro. Next, oil is added to a tava, or griddle, followed by a mountain of chopped onions, which are fried for a few minutes before green chilies and tomatoes are added.
नमक मसाला तो है ही है, उसका कोई वजन नहीं होता, तो खुलता रहता, डलता रहता, खुलता रहता, डलता रहता.
Next, a medley of spices is added. The vegetables are cooked and smashed using a masher until the tomatoes and onions melt and form a thick emulsion of all the flavors. Once the tomato-onion emulsion is nearly cooked through, each egg is slowly cracked by hand in the center and added onto the heat. The eggs are scrambled with a spatula, and the other layer of the tomato-onion emulsion is slowly incorporated. Next, the fully cooked Egg Bhurji is pushed to the perimeter. In the center of the tava, butter is melted, followed by finely chopped green chilies and large spoonfuls of multiple spices. This process is called tarka, a common Indian cooking technique that allows for the tempering of whole or ground spices in oil, butter, or ghee. This process enhances the flavor and aroma and creates a richly spiced dish. The final dish is garnished with cilantro and portioned into plates for each customer to enjoy. It is served with a buttered toasted peas pav and an onion tomato salad. If the spice is too much to handle, you can request a side of yogurt. Unlike scrambled eggs, Egg Bhurji isn't limited to breakfast. It can be eaten throughout the day. In fact, this stall attracts its largest crowds between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m.
Here, the bhurji pav is really great. It's fresh.
I've been eating here since childhood. It's just yum.
A single batch with 200 eggs takes 3 hours to make, from chopping the vegetables, cracking all the eggs, and frying to serving the final dish. A single batch is sold within 1 hour, feeding 60 to 70 people. Mohammed Nasir is an expert at making the dish. His street stall is now famous in Mumbai. Pav Bhaji and Bhurji Center has been attracting crowds for over 10 years. About 500 people visit a day to watch vendors make this high-volume dish.
देखो भुर्जी जो फेमस है तो महाराष्ट्र में ही फेमस है. इंडिया में तो कोई भी घर में भी बनाता है. बाकी मेरे पास दिल्ली से आते, बाकी उन्होंने बोला कि बॉम्बे के जैसा भुर्जी मोहम्मद नासिर के जैसा किसी का नहीं.
Every year, 650 million kilos of Gouda cheese are produced in the Netherlands. Most of it is produced industrially, using pasteurized milk. But there are some exceptions. We're here to visit one of the few farms that is still producing traditional raw milk Gouda cheese.
We make a real farming cheese on this farm, and we are specialized in in aged cheese. And the taste will really be special when it's aged.
This place is actually quite remote. We're like immersed in nature and we're actually on an island. We had to take a small boat and cross a canal in order to get here.
Do I go back? We're in the right direction, maybe? Not very coordinated, no? How do you row?
And the woman that is producing the cheese is actually doing it in her own house, which is this one behind me. Depending on whether you're a native, you will pronounce it either Gouda or Gouda. So since we're talking about authentic Dutch cheese, we're going to call it Gouda. The cheese takes its name from the city of Gouda in South Holland. But unlike with other cheeses that are named after cities, there was never any cheese making in Gouda. In the Middle Ages, Gouda acquired sole cheese market rights, basically becoming the only city in the country where farmers could trade their cheese. Gouda was associated so much with the cheese sold there that it was eventually named after the city. The Gouda cheese market was started in 1395. Today, it is one of the most popular attractions in the Netherlands. There are only 280 farmers across the country still making raw milk boerenkaas, or farmer's cheese. And there are only 2 farms that take their cheese to the next level, making boerengasse opperklaas, or aged artisanal Gouda, a special type of raw milk farmhouse cheese that must weigh at least 20 kilograms and can be made only in the summer with cattle grazing in the Green Heart region, between the cities of Amsterdam, Rotterdam and Utrecht. Meet Marije van der Poel, who lives on an island in the village of Rijpwetering in South Holland with her husband Hugo and their 3 children, and makes 15 wheels of aged artisanal Gouda every day at the back of their house.
The family van der Poel started here in 1932. So my husband's grandfather, grandmother, they started here, and we still make cheese on the same way, on the authentic way of cheese making. And in 1965, his father and mother, they came here, they married, and they came and started also, and they make cheese. We start living here in 1996. We get married, and my mother-in-law, she learned me how to make cheese. And now, so I do it now for 23 years on my own. We have 150 cows, and we milk them twice a day.
The cheese is made from cold milk from the previous day and warm milk that's fresh.
Every morning I wake up at 10 to 6, and my husband wake up at 4:15. He calls the cows out of the land and they come, and then at 5 o'clock he starts milking them. And in the evening before he also milk the cows, and then when I wake up at 10 to 6, the first thing I do, I make the milk sour. And then at 7 o'clock I have about 3,000, a bit more milk liters, and then I put some rennet to it. And when you put some rennet to it, the milk will get thick in 30 minutes. It's real special every morning. So when I leave the milk rest for 30 minutes, after that short time you can cut it really slowly. And when you cut it, the fresh cheese will go down and the whey will go up. We bring the whey away, we spread it all over our land. And the real fresh cheese we keep stirring, and slowly we bring it back to the temperature of the cows, up to 37 degrees, not higher, because we make raw milk cheese.
The process of adding warm water to the cheese, called washing the curd, is generally used to make the cheese sweeter. Washing the curd removes lactose, which bacteria could transform into acid. Blocks of curd are then pressed together into wooden molds with the help of linen cloths.
We still use the molds of my husband's grandfather and grandmother. The wooden molds is real special to make cheese. There are only a few cheesemakers in Holland who still use wooden molds. It's because we think the wooden molds is the best to make old aged cheese. Because the wooden molds keep the warmth inside, and that's the best. For the taste. So the taste after 2 years is really special. You can still make slices of it after 2 years, and that's real special. There are only 2 farmers in Holland who make this cheese. So that's really, really special.
Each wheel has a unique plaque made from milk protein with information about where and when it was produced. The curds are pressed in the wooden molds for 2 hours on each side. In the evening, they are moved to brines.
It's a natural way to bring salt into the wheels and water slowly, only a few, out of the wheels. And that's different of the factories, because in the factories where they make cheese, they bring salt during the making process. And we do it on an authentic way, in a salty bath. So really slowly.
Cheese wheels stay 5 days in the salty baths, then dry for 24 hours. The Van der Poel family keeps them for a week in their farm, where they are covered by a biological coating.
We put the coating on it 3 times every side, because it's easier to keep them clean. And then every week a trader is collecting about 90 wheels up here, and he keeps them in big trader houses, warehouses I think, for a long time. And he aged them, because we are good in making cheese and he's good in aging cheese.
Gouda has to age for at least 28 days. This specialty, the aged artisanal Gouda, ages for at least 2 years, but some wheels can age longer.
And there are no farmers who take the risk to keep the cheese as long as we do in warehouses. So it's really special. This is perfect. It looks perfect. Only a few small holes, so the cheese looked at you like eyes. Only a few. And you see the crystals. All the people think they are salty crystals, but it's protein crystals.
Mariah's cut us a slice of a 3-year-old cheese, and as you can see from the texture, it's actually quite soft, and it's something that I wasn't expecting coming from a cheese that has been aged for 3 years. Like 3 years is such a long time, and I would expect it to be like harder. But here it is. Let's give it a try. It's got like real milky, cheesy taste, like no salt at all. And it's sort of like nutty, caramel-like. Like it reminds me a bit of Parmesan in a way, but in the sense that like it kind of touches the same taste buds, but texture-wise is completely different. Like this one is softer and it melts more in your mouth. It's buttery. Authentic Dutch Gouda is protected by the EU's Protected Geographical Indication under the name Gouda Holland. This certifies that the cheese comes from Holland and has been made traditionally with Dutch milk.
This is her plan to prove all her work in the gym.
Real life is a real gym.
Oh God, yeah.
Do we have a beer?
Huh? Do you have a TV?
We're in Seine-et-Marne in France, in the birthplace of Brie. And actually, we're not far from Paris. We're like 12 kilometers from Disneyland Paris. But here, it's another type of theme park. We are at the Farm de Trentarpin, which is one of the 7 farms making Brie de Meaux. And the only one that makes it fermier, which means from the farm, which means that the cows are milked here and the cheese is just made 100 meters from here. Quelle est la race de la vache?
C'est la race Primostein, qui est la race laitière par excellence. Voilà, et puis elle parle beaucoup aussi, elle s'exprime.
The farm has 250 cows in total. After milk is collected, it is stored in these vats for 18 hours and some part of its cream is taken out while some natural ferments are added. These include Penicillium and Geotricum, which make up Brie de Meaux's signature texture and flavor. But more on that later. One day after being collected, milk is moved to another room where it will be split into curds. This is done thanks to the addition of rennet, which takes about 1 hour to solidify the milk.
Le lait est dur là, vous voyez, là, on le voit, il pris en masse là.
In this other room, it was so hot that our cameras steamed up and we had to wait a bit to resume filming.
Il y a trop de fumée quand c'est fait.
Il faut attendre un peu. Mais là, oui, c'est compliqué. Ça prend un petit peu de temps.
C'est quelle température ici?
30 degrés là.
30 degrés. Ok.
Alors vous allez voir, le moulage, c'est quelque chose de physique. Il faut 2 heures. Il y a 4 ou 5 personnes qui font le moulage. Au bout de 2 heures, 2 heures à faire ça, vous allez voir, c'est fatigant.
Vous pouvez m'expliquer qu'est-ce que vous êtes en train de faire?
Donc là, je prends mon cahier, je pose tout doucement dans le moule. Et là, je vais tourner au fur et à mesure. Je tourne dans la bassine et je tourne dans le moule. Et je pose mes pelles de cahier tout doucement. Voilà. Je tourne et là, je tourne.
Et quel outil utilisez-vous?
C'est la pelle en inox, la pelle à Brie.
Ok. Donc ça, c'est spécifique du Brie.
Oui. Ça, c'est la méthode traditionnelle.
Et donc, est-il important de mouler à la main?
Oui, oui, parce qu'il faut déposer. En fait, c'est des pelles assez régulières, pas trop grosses, pas trop fines, et il faut poser assez délicatement. Il ne faut pas jeter le cahier, parce qu'autrement, les morceaux les cubes, après, ça s'écrase. Et c'est pas bon pour le fromage. Ça ne fera pas du bon produit.
Et combien de cahiers mettez-vous dans les bassines ici?
Bah là, on va mettre, là, on a 70 litres de lait. On va partager dans 3 moules.
En bassine, elle fait 3 bris de Meaux.
Chaque jour, on travaille 3 jours de lait. On prépare le lait du lendemain, on moule le lait de la journée et on démoule les fromages de la veille.
Pourquoi est-il important de maintenir le lait cru?
Le fait de chauffer le lait peut amener à détruire quelques particularités du lait, des éléments de goût, des éléments de texture, toutes ces choses-là. Et donc, il est de bon ton de penser que tous les fromages au lait cru sont plus goûteux, plus fermiers, et voilà. Et donc, tout le brie de Meaux, tous les bris de Meaux sont faits au lait cru.
The mold is made of 3 layers, which are removed gradually as the cheese loses its liquid. From 25 liters of liquid, it's going to get smaller and smaller up until 5 liters. This is going to take 3 hours. And at the end of the whole making process, the weight of the cheese is going to be 3 kilos.
Donc là, c'est des fromages, ils ont été moulés ce matin, vers 7h moins le quart, on a démarré ce matin. Donc là, il va être 11h moins 20, moins le quart, oui, ça fait 3 heures. Entre 3h et 3h30 pour arriver au moule.
Le premier, ok.
Ouais.
Et il continue à perdre de liquide en fait.
Oui, jusqu'à demain.
On their first day, cheeses in molds are turned 3 times with the help of a steel plate to make sure they hold their shape. They are then piled up on top of each other.
Et donc ici, en fait, on retrouve le même dessin du bois.
Oui.
Il était posé.
C'est du jonc.
Oh, ok.
C'est pas du bois, c'est du jonc. On utilise le jonc, c'est une méthode très ancienne. C'est spécifique au brie de Meaux, avec du jonc, donc qui est nettoyé, désinfecté tous les jours, qui est stérilisé tous les jours, on change tous les jours. Et ça permet de bien maintenir le moule avec le cahier, avec la plaque en dessous. Ça glisse pas beaucoup. Ça reste stable. Autrement, on peut mettre des plastiques, mais le problème c'est que ça glisse.
Et aussi, ça vous permet de faire passer un peu de liquide aussi?
Oui, ça absorbe. Ça va dedans, ça va dedans. Là, c'est bien pris, on voit, ça coule.
Oh, wow!
The cheeses stay in the molds for 24 hours to make sure they drain all their liquid. In total, the farm will make about 300 wheels of brie de Meaux, ladled from 100 basins. The day after, the cheeses are removed from molds and salted.
Ça, c'est le brie de Meaux d'hier. Donc celui-là, demain, à la même heure, il sera comme ça.
Oh, wow!
Et là, on a mis du sel dessus. Si vous touchez dessus, on peut sentir le sel. Allez-y, mettez votre doigt là. On peut sentir, il y a du sel dessus un petit peu.
Oh, oui, c'est vrai. I have some salt crystals. No, it doesn't smell like it.
Ils vont passer une journée ici, et là, il fait environ 18 degrés. On est dans la phase descendante de la température.
Oui, tu peux le sentir.
Oui.
It's much more pleasant.
Alors, le salage va permettre de finir l'égouttage en fait. Et donc, on place les fromages en pente comme ça pour que le sérum s'égoutte le long des grilles et tombe sur le côté pour ne pas que le premier s'égoutte sur le suivant. Sinon, celui du dessous sera complètement trempé. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut en manger? Là, ça n'a pas très bon goût.
Il faut attendre.
Voilà, il faut commencer l'affinage. Alors, il passe une journée ici et vous allez voir dans la prochaine salle, c'est l'odeur qui est importante. Voilà. Et là?
Wow, yeah, it smells very differently. It's strong, tangy.
Yeah, we can smell nuts and apples. Vous voyez?
It smells like apples.
Cheese wheels are then moved to another room where they stay for 5 to 7 days, within which they're going to be turned 3 times to avoid collapsing. Here they start to get whiter, and it's where we start to see the first effects of the ferments added to the milk at the beginning.
Donc ce fromage-là, il y a combien de semaines?
Voilà, alors celui-ci c'est un fromage qui a 4 semaines aujourd'hui. Pour le Brie de Meaux, donc le minimum d'affinage c'est 4 semaines pour prétendre être un Brie de Meaux. Chez nous, on prend notre temps. Et donc en général, on est en moyenne d'affinage entre 7 et 8 semaines chez nous.
Okay.
Voilà. Et donc là, on peut voir sur ce fromage, donc le pénicillium, c'est vraiment ce feutrage blanc qu'on peut voir ici, comme ça. Et ici, on a le développement du géotrichum,
Okay.
qui est un autre ferment. Et on voit qu'ils font leur travail, puisque déjà, voilà, le fromage, il s'affine et il devient plus crémeux. Voilà.
Et donc il faut les ajouter ensemble, les deux,
Voilà.
les deux ferments, le géotrichum et le pénicillium.
Ils vont travailler chacun leur tour un petit peu, plutôt le pénicillium en premier, et ensuite le géotrichum, et c'est eux qui vont assurer l'affinage du fromage aussi. Here, 8 degrees.
Cold. It is cold.
This is the last room of the maturation process, and it is another cold one.
Yeah, 8 degrés.
Ici, on est à 6.
6. Oh, I'm dead. It's 6 degrees in this. It's so cold. C'est ça, d'ailleurs, différentes saisons.
C'est vrai.
Ici, c'est l'hiver.
Et alors, ce qui est important pour un fromage, c'est qu'on part haut en température et on diminue tranquillement. En général, on descend par en dessous. Parce qu'après, c'est un frigo et ça n'évolue plus, quoi. Voilà. Et donc là, voilà, nous avons un fromage qui est prêt à la commercialisation, qui est bien affiné.
Okay.
Oui, bien sûr.
You can feel the hard crust outside, the rind, and then inside you can feel that it's very, very, very soft. Ça, c'est 7 semaines?
7 semaines d'affinage.
Et combien pèse-t-il?
Voilà, un fromage comme ça, dans le cahier des charges, c'est 3 kg. Entre 2,8 kg et 3,2 kg.
Et ça, c'est une caractéristique aussi de Brie de Meaux, non?
45% de matière grasse également. C'est pour ça, vous vous souvenez, au départ, on enlève une partie de la crème. C'est pour qu'à la fin, il fasse ces 45% de matière grasse.
Ok.
Quand on fait un plateau de fromage, ou quand des gens nous achètent un Brie de Meaux, on dit qu'un Brie de Meaux est fait pour 50 personnes.
50 personnes?
Voilà.
Ah, je croyais moi. Non.
Vous êtes une grosse consommatrice.
Oui, moi j'aime le fromage.
Une vache comme ça va donner entre 25 et 30 litres de lait par jour pour faire un Brie de Meaux. Puisqu'un Brie de Meaux, c'est 25 litres à peu près.
Oh, ok.
Et donc, une vache, un fromage par jour, c'est à peu près la vérité. On essaie de maîtriser la filière de la fourche à la fourchette, comme on dit. Et donc voilà, l'idée c'est de faire le maximum de choses nous-mêmes. Et donc ça, c'est la nourriture qui est produite sur le domaine. Et on peut retrouver des morceaux de maïs, des morceaux de paille, des morceaux d'herbe. Voilà. Et tout ça, c'est un mélange. On a de la luzerne également dedans. Et on a également un peu de betterave. Voilà, ça, c'est des morceaux de betterave. Voilà. Il faut lui mettre un micro peut-être au haut. Il existe une tradition avec le Brie de Meaux. C'est qu'il faut toujours couper le Brie de Meaux de la pointe vers l'extérieur. On ne coupe jamais la pointe du Brie de Meaux. Certains disent que ça porte malheur. À la vôtre.
So creamy. So creamy and buttery.
J'aime ce goût de noisette, un petit peu. On retrouve de noisette ou de beurre.
But actually it's very sweet. I would say probably sweeter than how it would have been if it had been only 4 weeks old. Baguettes. Can you name a more quintessential French food? The recipe is quite simple. You just need flour, water, yeast and salt. Yet here in France, it's not just any loaf of bread that anybody can make at home. We're in Paris, in the 14th district, and we're about to meet with Mahmoud Msedi. He's an artisanal baker, son of a baker, who's been making bread basically ever since he can remember. This is his shop. Let's walk in.
Mahmoud is a master of bread. Look at this giant loaf! He even won an award for the best baguette in Paris. What he's going to show us is not your average baguette, but the baguette tradition, which is a baguette made on site with simple ingredients.
La baguette tradition est différente parce qu'elle a un procédé différent des autres pains en fait. C'est quelque chose qu'on ne peut pas faire vite. Si on ne respecte pas le temps, eh ben, on n'aura jamais une bonne tradition. Et c'est pour ça qu'elle est unique et c'est pour ça aussi qu'elle est connue.
Making a baguette is much more complex and time-consuming than you'd think. Every step requires inside knowledge, skill and expertise. It all starts with the dough. Mahmoud starts making the dough at 5 a.m. with only flour and water. Kneads it, then at 8 a.m. he adds yeast and salt and water again.
L'eau c'est pour par exemple contrôler la température. Si par exemple ma pâte est trop froide, je vais rajouter de l'eau chaude. Si elle est trop chaude, je vais rajouter de l'eau froide. Ça me permet de récupérer en fait, d'avoir à chaque fois la température la même tous les jours. Donc, donne un gant à madame. Mais touchez. Vous allez voir, elle est très froide.
Oh, ouais, c'est très très froid.
Voilà. C'est pour ça que nous, on va mettre de l'eau chaude ici. Parce que aujourd'hui, il fait très froid. Et nous, on pétrit dans la boulangerie, pas au sous-sol. La plupart des boulangeries, ils pétrissent au sous-sol. Donc, il fait souvent chaud au sous-sol. Mais nous, non, on est obligé de s'adapter parce que s'il fait froid, eh ben, ma pâte va être trop froide. S'il fait très chaud, ma pâte va être très chaude. Donc, je vais devoir à chaque fois réajuster. Okay. Je m'adapte en fonction du temps, en fait, the weather.
Sa pâte, elle a reposé pour
3 heures, c'est ça. Donc, elle prend la température extérieure.
Parfait. Est-ce qu'il y a une température idéale ou...
Oui, à la sortie, 24. Quand je sors ma pâte, l'idéal c'est 24 degrés. Le plus important, c'est le mélange. Si on réussit le mélange, on réussit toute la production. Il faut que la pâte soit lisse.
On ne pourrait jamais ajouter tous les ingrédients comme ça, tout ensemble.
Bah, c'est déconseillé. C'est comme la cuisine ou les gâteaux, on ne met jamais tout d'un coup. On surveille toujours le mélange et on réajuste à chaque fois. Parce que ce qui compte, c'est le résultat. Déjà, on entend les bulles qui commencent à...
You can hear the sounds of the dough.
Je ne sais pas si vous entendez les bulles s'éclater. Cloc.
Combien de temps il faut, selon vous, pour apprendre à connaître la pâte?
Moi, j'ai eu la chance, c'est que mon père, il est boulanger. Donc, j'ai grandi dans le milieu. Donc, je l'ai regardé quand j'étais petit travailler. Donc, c'est devenu une habitude maintenant. Mais sinon, un bon boulanger, il lui faut au moins 10 ans d'expérience. Voilà.
Et vous m'avez juste dit que vous êtes en train d'ouvrir une autre boulangerie au Canada.
Oui.
Est-ce qu'il y a... Bon, bien sûr, il y a des différences de température.
Oui, ça va être nouveau pour moi. Ça sera une expérience pour moi. Je sais qu'il fait très très froid au Canada, que par exemple, il y a des jours où il fait moins 10, moins 20 peut-être. On n'a jamais ça à Paris. Donc ça va être nouveau pour moi. Il va falloir faire chauffer l'eau avec la casserole. Donc là, vous voyez, elle ne colle pas sur le bord. C'est arrondi. Vous pouvez toucher. C'est mou et à la fois ferme.
Ok. Oh, ouais, c'est vrai. L'extérieur, c'est très ferme, mais on a...
Et en même temps, c'est comme une balle.
Oui,
Voilà.
Oui.
Vous pouvez taper, vous voyez, c'est dur et en même temps, c'est mou.
Oui. C'est vraiment comme ça.
Oui. Donc ça veut dire que mon réseau, il est constitué et en même temps, c'est moelleux. Donc là, à la fin, je vais avoir une tradition avec une belle croûte parce qu'elle est dure et en même temps, ça sera moelleux à l'intérieur. Ça, c'est très très bien. Donc nous, on va mettre un petit coup de deuxième pour lui donner un peu plus de force. Vous entendez? Là, il y a des bulles d'air qui se forment. Et elles vont éclater. Et c'est comme ça qu'on sait que la pâte, elle est prête. Donc là, vous avez vu, ça colle, là. Voilà. On va la laisser se reposer. Là, il y a une bulle d'air. C'est ce qu'on trouve dans les tradis après. Voilà, on va trouver. Et donc, ce qui fait la différence, c'est qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui ont des bulles d'air, soit toutes petites. Moi, on va avoir toutes les tailles. Vous allez voir après, quand on ouvrira une, on aura des petites, des grosses, des moyennes, toutes les tailles.
Est-ce qu'il y a un message
Quand c'est petit, c'est comme tout le monde. Quand c'est irrégulier, c'est personnel. C'est pour ça que la tradie, on la trouve. La mienne, on ne peut pas la trouver ailleurs.
Vous ne pouvez pas contrôler la taille des bulles d'air?
Je ne peux pas contrôler, mais je peux faire en sorte d'avoir des bulles irrégulières. Ça, c'est un de mes secrets, ça.
When the dough is ready, it rests for 1 hour. Then it is taken out in small batches.
Donc les gens font avec la farine, nous on fait avec l'eau. C'est plus propre et c'est les anciennes méthodes.
Pourquoi pas de farine? Parce qu'on va modifier l'harmonie des ingrédients.
Si on fait avec la farine, on va baisser le taux d'hydratation. Donc c'est comme si on aura mis moins d'eau parce qu'on aura augmenté de la farine. Quand on farine, quand on sort avec la farine, tous ces petits gestes, si à chaque fois on met de la farine, eh ben on va perdre en hydratation et donc on aura moins de bulles. On va casser en fait le réseau à chaque fois. Donc c'est pour ça qu'on fait avec de l'eau pour protéger le réseau au maximum. Regardez, vous avez vu les bulles?
Oui.
Elles sont déjà là.
Ok.
Et c'est pas les mêmes tailles. Ça c'est ce qu'on va retrouver dans le pain après. Et donc là on retrouve comme tout à l'heure, c'est bombé et en même temps...
The batches of dough will be left to rest until the following day, while batches from the day before are going to be cut in pieces and shaped. This is when the dough starts to resemble a baguette.
On peut le faire à la main, mais ça prend beaucoup de temps.
Ah, ok.
Et quand on fait à la main, on chauffe la pâte.
Ah oui, c'est vrai.
Et donc ça fait qu'on devra faire attention à la température, respecter que ce soit bien frais, parce que justement, on a chauffé la pâte. Et le problème de la main, c'est que ce ne sera pas droit. Il y aura des coups plus gros, plus fins, plus gros, plus fins. Ça dépend en fait de la pression qu'on met pour la faire. C'est pour ça que la machine, ça permet d'être régulier.
Et ça, c'est du coton?
C'est de la toile.
Ah, ok.
Il y a des gens qui dessinent sur ça.
Ah, ok, oui.
Voilà,
bien sûr.
oui.
Et pourquoi utilisez-vous ça?
Parce que ça ne colle pas. Et puis, s'il y a de l'humidité dans l'air ou dans la machine, et ben, ça va protéger la baguette. Le tissu il va boire l'humidité.
Et donc, la différence entre la baguette traditionnelle et la baguette, c'est qu'on utilise la pâte d'aujourd'hui?
Non, la baguette, elle est faite le jour même, elle ne se repose pas. La tradie, elle se repose. Voilà. Donc, on met des rangées de 6. C'est l'idéal. Quand c'est trop serré, ça va mal cuire, elle va tomber, parce qu'il n'y aura pas assez de chaleur entre les tradis. Et puis quand c'est trop espacé, ça cuit trop vite à l'extérieur et pas assez à l'intérieur. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il faut trouver le bon rendement en fait.
Vous utilisez cet outil
Oui, une planche.
En planche en bois?
Oui.
Parce qu'on pourrait jamais le faire avec les mains.
Alors, en fait, la tradie, c'est l'un des pains les plus fragiles. Parce que c'est pour ça que ça demande beaucoup de temps de repos, c'est très délicat la tradition. Donc pour protéger le réseau, les bulles d'air en fait, au maximum, l'alvéolage, on est obligé de les prendre à la planche. Il faut être très délicat.
Parce que comme ça, on respecte la forme.
Plus on fait attention à la tradie, plus elle sortira bombée. Voilà. Maintenant, on va donner un coup de lame pour la dégazer. Et puis pour l'esthétique aussi. Voilà. Soit on met un coup de lame, c'est ce que fait Mourad. Moi j'aime bien mettre 4 ou 5. Voilà.
Est-ce qu'il y a une règle ou c'est juste un dessin
Alors il y a une règle.
personnel?
Il faut de préférence donner au milieu. Et puis ensuite, il ne faut pas appuyer. Il faut avoir une lame qui coupe bien. C'est pour ça que j'ai plein de bobos partout. Et puis plus on coupera bien, plus la grille. C'est-à-dire que c'est ce qu'on verra à la fin, c'est ça la grille. Ça, c'est la grille. Ça coupe. Si on fait ça, mon gant, il va se trouver.
One batch of dough will make about 20 baguettes, and about 200 baguettes will come out from the whole of the dough.
La température est importante aussi.
270. C'est important, oui. Si c'est pas assez chaud, ça sera plat. Si c'est trop chaud, ça va cramer trop vite. C'est pour ça que tout le monde pense que c'est facile de faire du pain, mais faire du bon pain, voire du très bon pain ou de l'excellent pain, c'est très difficile. Ça a bien gonflé,
Ça
hein?
a bien gonflé.
C'est bon, vas-y, vas-y, sors. Voilà, c'est joli. Voilà.
Ça fait juste 20 minutes. Non.
Moins 19.
Moins 19, ok.
Voilà, là on a une belle green. It's very hot.
Est-ce qu'on cherche un son particulier?
On sent que ça croustille bien, donc c'est que la croûte est bien épaisse. Et puis en même temps, on sent que c'est moelleux. C'est ça le pire. C'est que quand on touche, c'est moelleux, mais en même temps, ça fait un bruit de craquement. Elle a gardé sa forme.
C'est vrai.
Elle n'est pas restée aplatie,
Mhm.
elle a gardé sa forme. Voilà. Donc vous avez vu les bulles, c'est pas la même taille. Donc on a toutes les tailles. Petites, grandes, moyennes. La mi teint vers le jaune. Ça c'est dû à la fermentation. Et puis donc on a une croûte qui est assez épaisse, assez dure. Et à l'intérieur, c'est très moelleux, très tendre. Et là, on sent bien le froment, le blé français. Vous voulez le sentir?
Oui. Waouh.
Vous pouvez toucher, hein, vous allez voir, c'est très moelleux.
Ah oui, c'est vrai. So soft inside.
Voilà.
Wow.
Et là, c'est très dur. Ouais.
Voilà.
Il y a aussi quelque chose qu'on peut faire, ça, quand on voit ça, c'est que c'est très aéré à l'intérieur. On arrive à voir à travers.
Ouais, donc il y a de l'espace pour la lumière de
Voilà.
passer.
Quand on a ça, c'est qu'on a un réseau de bulles à l'intérieur.
Wow.
Quand on voit la lumière.
Incroyable.
Il faut qu'il fasse un petit peu plus sombre parce qu'il y a beaucoup de lumière ici. Si j'éteins la lumière.
Oh.
Vous avez vu? C'est beau, hein? C'est pour ça que la tradi, elle est bonne à manger, même pour la digestion. Elle est facile à digérer. Contrairement aux autres pains, on a beaucoup de mie et donc on se sent lourd. Alors que la tradi, non. Vous voyez, il n'y a rien. Il n'y a rien dedans.
Parce que la baguette, c'est très grand, mais en fait,
Oui.
c'est
Il y a
plein
rien.
d'air.
Il y a plein d'air dedans, voilà. Quand c'est bien fait, hein. Quand c'est pas très bien fait, on a beaucoup de mie dedans et on retrouve pas après là ce qu'on va voir, les bulles. Voilà.
Wow.
Ça, on le retrouve pas si la lumière ne passe pas. On aura des mie et c'est pas bon pour la digestion.
Ça serait blanche?
Oui.
Ah.
Vous avez vu les belles alvéoles?
Yes, c'est vrai, ce sont tous irréguliers.
C'est ça. Ça, c'est ma signature. Vous voulez goûter? Il est temps, hein? Voilà.
Ah, merci. Pour vous aussi.
Merci. Donc là, on sent bien le blé. Et quand on touche, c'est humide. On dirait que c'est mouillé.
Ah, ok, c'est vrai en fait.
Ouais. On dirait que c'est mouillé.
Ouais. Ça, c'est l'air qui
C'est l'eau aussi que je mets dans le pain. Donc le taux d'hydratation que j'avais dit tout à l'heure, si on réussit à le préserver, et ben, ça fait qu'on a une mie qui est humide. Donc c'est croquant, à la fois moelleux, et ça fond dans la bouche en fait.
Il n'y a pas de mie agressive, non. C'est très léger.
Ça fond.
Vous faites le boulanger depuis combien de temps?
Écoutez, ça fait, on va dire, 28 ans, depuis que je suis né en fait. Mon père est boulanger depuis 30 ans, il est boulanger. Donc j'ai grandi à côté de lui. Je me réveillais déjà à 4 heures quand j'étais tout petit. Hein. Je descendais avec lui à la boulangerie. Et donc il m'a transmis sa passion. j'ai appris à travers lui.
Et après, vous avez décidé d'ouvrir votre boulangerie
Alors, j'ai d'abord fait des études. J'ai fait un bac S, option maths, et ensuite j'ai fait une prépa et puis une licence de chimie. Et en même temps, j'ai travaillé avec mon père toujours. Je me réveillais à 4 h.
Wow.
À 7 h, je prenais une douche et je partais à la fac.
Est-ce qu'il faut, vraiment une connaissance de la chimie ou...
Ça m'a aidé. En fait, la chimie, la prépa, toutes mes études m'ont permis de mieux comprendre ce que je fais en fait. Parce que je sais qu'il y a des réactions qui se passent et des choses qui sont importantes, des détails. Les pesées, les dosages, les mélanges, tout ça, c'est des choses qui font partie de la chimie que nous, on nous a enseignées, qui ont une importance énorme. Alors que je pense que certains boulangers n'ont pas cette notion d'importance pour ce genre de détails. J'ai des amis qui me disent je suis le boulanger chimiste. Ils m'ont donné un surnom.
J'ai vu ici que vous avez les deux drapeaux.
Oui.
Est-ce que c'est important pour vous d'avoir ce double héritage?
Oui. Pour moi, c'est une chance d'avoir deux nationalités, deux cultures différentes. Le fait d'être tunisien et d'être aussi français, et puis d'arriver là où je suis, d'être l'un des meilleurs boulangers de Paris, il n'y a pas mieux, il n'y a pas mieux. Je suis très fier.
Every week, over 6,600 people vacation aboard the world's largest cruise ship. And all those people need to eat 3, 4, 8 times a day.
You have to calculate that is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus snacks, plus at night, plus all 24-hour food all around, and that never stops.
Ship kitchens run 24/7, manned by a culinary team of more than 1,000 people. They dish out over 30,000 meals every single day. And they do it all from compact kitchens on a rocking ship. So how does all this food make it to the plate? We'll start on the loading dock on a Saturday. This is turnaround day, when all new food is delivered to Deck 2.
This is basically a place that you would not like to be on turnaround day when we are loading. It's busy, super busy.
That's Jarrett. He orders food for the ship's 23 different restaurants. Every week, Jarrett's got a $1 million shopping budget. All of that is just for 7 days of food. Sometimes Jarrett will tweak his orders based on who's coming aboard. More kids means more chicken fingers.
That's how the operation runs. So we monitor it on a daily basis, what has been used, what has not been used, and then we adjust our orders accordingly. But by and large, being in Miami, having the same number of people, it's almost the same every cruise.
On turnaround day, 30 trucks arrive at Miami Port. They're carrying 500 pallets worth of inventory, and all that has to be loaded onto the ship by 4 p.m.
Any delay in our operation can hamper the sail away of the ship, which is again a big logistic requirement.
Over 600,000 pounds of food and drinks are provisioned for just 1 week of sailing. Once on board, everything is moved along the ship's secret highway. This is I-95, and it runs the entire length of the ship, on Deck 2.
We separate all the stores to the different locations that they are supposed to go. We have about 20 different storerooms divided into freezers, fridges, walk-in fridges, and rice stores.
Seafood, meat, vegetables, and fruit are all divided and stored in separate fridges.
If you come towards the end of the cruise, this box will be almost empty with a few fruits that are needed for 2 more days, which we keep as backup stock.
There are also 6 freezers. That's where the 700 pounds of ice cream that'll be eaten each week are stored. Dry goods are stored down on Deck 1.
Full of spices, full of chocolate in this storeroom, coffee. It's nice to be in this storeroom.
An elevator gets the food downstairs. Jarrett's team checks all of the food for quality control every day. If produce is ripening faster than expected, they try to work it into another meal. For example, overripe broccoli could go into broccoli cheddar soup instead of being tossed. Once inventory is stored, restaurants on upper decks put in food orders with Jarrett. Chefs will come downstairs, pick up their order, and cart it away to be cooked. That's where this guy comes in.
Any food on board this beautiful ship, anything you eat it, is my responsibility. Wherever you have beautiful potato fry, it's mine. Rice is mine. Pate is mine. Pastry is mine. Salad, shrimp, wherever you eat it, it's my responsibility.
Rijo's team of 280 chefs run the kitchens 24/7. Each chef works 10 to 12-hour days. Contracts typically last 4 months without a single day off.
Some of the people start working for 8 o'clock in the morning, all the way to 2 o'clock, take a break, come back again 5 o'clock, finish by 9:30. Then other group start working 10 o'clock in the night, all the way to 10 o'clock in the morning. So we cover day and night productions.
Chefs on board cook up nearly 100 different menus every week. All the menus are developed at Royal Caribbean's Miami headquarters. And every week, chefs stick to the same rotation of menus, cooking up everything from racks of lamb to hand-rolled sushi. The food has to be diverse to match Symphony of the Sea's international passengers, vacationing at all kinds of price points.
We try to please everybody and to make sure that everybody find what you're looking for.
All the cooking happens in 36 kitchens, or galleys as they're called on a ship. There are 12 specialty restaurants on board, costing up to $50 a person, and each of those restaurants has its own small galley. In those tight quarters, chefs crank out the same menu every day. At Jamie's Italian, it's fresh pasta. At Hooked, it's over 2,000 oysters, shucked per cruise. But the largest amount of food is reserved for the main dining room, which spans 3 decks and serves up to 6,000 people a night. Eating here is included in your ticket. Before food heads up to the main galleys, it starts in one of the prep kitchens, off I-95. There's a butcher shop.
Butcher, good morning. Yes, sir. These are the gentlemen looking after all the meat cuts.
The butcher goes through about 15,000 pounds of beef and 9,700 pounds of chicken each week. There's also a veggie cutting room and a fish thawing box. Lobster is the most popular dish in main dining. The ship goes through about 2,100 pounds of lobster tails every week. Finally, the food heads upstairs to the main galley. The ship's biggest kitchen is broken down by categories: desserts, bread, cold food, and hot food. In dessert, chefs whip up cakes, chocolates, and 100 different types of pastries. Over in the bread bakery, they make 40 different kinds of bread from all over the world, all from scratch. But the real hustle comes just before the dinner rush. 6,000 hungry passengers in the main dining room. Remember Rijo? Before dinner prep starts, he has to approve all the dishes.
Good afternoon. How are you, Chef? Good.
Rijo tries each dish and gives his critiques.
We're gonna put a little bit more perno, a little bit more gale, a little bit more herbs. Very, very good. So this is what we do. Aioli. Aioli, we need to put a little bit more for today. Huh? You can see, Chef, how we look. Huh? Take a note, don't forget. That's what we're talking about, right? Beautiful, beautiful. We don't have any challenge, so we're ready to go. Chef, thank you so much, and thank you so much, and look forward to have a beautiful night tonight. Thank you, have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Chefs take his notes and get cooking. Chefs can see a tally of each dish ordered up on screens. The system also keeps track of how much inventory is used. In the cold room, salads and appetizers like carpaccio come together. In the hot room, chefs dish out soups, sauces, sides, and mains.
We have 2 kinds of chefs. Chefs working here on the line, which is close to me, plating up, and chefs on the stove cooking. So everything we do is in batch cooking. So basically, we grill a steak there, we pass it over to the pass. The person on the pass is plating it up to the requested temperature. That means always that the guests are getting fresh food, and from an operational point, we don't have any overproduction.
Finally, waiters deliver those dishes to hungry passengers out in main dining. Between the chefs, inventory crew, waiters, and dishwashers, it takes a team of 1,085 people to keep this massive operation going. Together, they cook nearly 11 million meals each year, and they're doing it all on a moving ship.
The ship is rocking, then all the equipment is built to the ship rocking. Then in whatever moment, maybe the ship move, somebody don't put one brake in one trolley, and you see the trolley flying away. And happen. That's why all the cooks always be the attention with that.
But if crew members are doing their job right, passengers won't even know any of it's happening. They'll just get back to eating their 8th meal of the day.
These cooks make up to 13,200 meals a day for the 4,400 cadets here at the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York. Today, the team is making over 22,000 meatballs, combined with 4,000 pounds of noodles and 150 gallons of tomato sauce. And that's just for one of the dishes on the lunch menu.
I would say in comparison to a standard college, we do things a little differently, I think, than most colleges do.
Attention all cadets. For lunch, we are having chicken.
There are lunchtime rituals, and each meal is balanced specifically for these future military leaders' rigorous workload.
The cadets' nutritional requirements are elevated because they are engaging in academic work, in military training, as well as their physical exercise that they're completing here day to day.
Every meal is earned, not given. So the fact that we are able to march in step, keeping our military bearing, shows after a long day or long morning of classes, we've earned this meal.
Meals at West Point are served here at Washington Hall, the historic mess hall where Army cooks have been feeding West Point cadets for nearly 100 years.
At meal times, the destination is Washington Hall, where the cadet gains back the pounds he lost during last summer's hike. And the food is tops in wholesomeness.
Probably our most difficult meal to support here is our lunch meals, where the cadets have about 25 minutes to get into the building, sit down, eat, and get out.
I think the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is how fast it all goes. So it starts at noon at formation. We all get in there by 12:10. And then after that, the food is served to 4,000 people and eaten all within 15 minutes.
But it's not just the cadets who have to move fast.
A lot of the cook staff who have been in those military environments and who have understood what that means to serve and what that looks like. So I think they try to structure the menu so that they may see similar things when they're out, not at West Point.
But how does the staff at West Point prepare over 4,000 nutritious meals that can be served and eaten in under 25 minutes? Insider was granted rare access to the mess hall to see how they pull it off. The food is prepared underneath the mess hall, in a labyrinth of hallways, kitchens, and freezers.
So feeding 4,000 cadets is certainly a challenge. It is also a very well-oiled machine. We've got multiple refrigerators and freezers here. My whole background in the Army has been in food service the entire 20 years that I've been in the Army. In the cadet mess, I have approximately 90 Department of the Army civilian employees that are our cooks. They're the ones that cook all the food. But we also have another approximately 130 or so contractors that work in the mess here, and their job is to actually serve the food to the cadets. The challenges to preparing 4,000 meals 3 times a day are substantial. Our staff is arriving at 3:30 in the morning, and we're not opening for breakfast for another 3 hours, but the reason is because it takes that 3 hours to prepare food for 4,500 cadets.
On the menu for today's lunch, spaghetti with meatballs, breadsticks, fruit salad, broccoli, and iced cake. Prepping enough spaghetti for over 4,000 students starts nearly 2 hours before lunchtime. In the large kitchen, cooks start the spaghetti by boiling 400 pounds of pasta in these giant vats. Then, they add 22,500 meatballs, which they prepared early this morning, enough for each cadet to have 5. With the spaghetti underway, cooks begin steaming 720 pounds of broccoli. Meanwhile, in the bakery, 400 cakes are being iced and placed on carts. Back in the main kitchen, cooks drain the water from the vats and add 150 gallons of tomato sauce. While the spaghetti is simmering, cooks in a temperature-controlled cold kitchen are preparing for a lunch that won't be served for another 2 days. These cooks are opening 2 pallets of frozen ribs weighing 3,600 pounds and breaking them into pieces. Prepping meals days in advance is one of the methods the mess hall staff uses to serve so many cadets so quickly.
For menu development, I work with a dietitian that works for the United States Corps of Cadets, which is upstairs from the cadet mess here. We come up with options that using Army recipes that are in the Army system, as well as other recipes that are available online, and we review those recipes, make sure that they meet the dietary guidelines that they need to meet for West Point's standards, and then we try them out.
I am a registered dietitian and a certified specialist in sports dietetics for the Corps of Cadets at West Point. So the menus are structured in a certain way to make sure that they are meeting all of their calorie requirements. So on the menus, there's usually carbohydrate-based foods, which are going to fuel their brain health, support their academic performance, as well as prime their muscles for some of that moderate to high intensity exercise that they're going to engage in. And then we usually have plant and animal-based protein sources in order to support their tissue and muscle recovery. And then we have a lot of different fruit and vegetable options, so fresh fruit. We have cooked vegetables at the table, as well as a pretty robust salad bar that provides lots of antioxidants to make sure that they get that color in, it supports their immune system, and make sure that they combat some of that inflammation that's occurring from that intense exercise.
Once all the dishes are finished, they are served into portioned containers and loaded into heated carts.
We have around 50 to 75 of the hot carts going, so generally speaking, each hot cart will hold food for about 10 tables.
10 minutes until assembly for lunch formation.
Before lunch formation and before morning formation, the plebes call minutes, and they say the meal for that day.
For lunch, we are having chicken, rice, and vegetables.
After receiving the minutes read aloud by freshmen known as plebes,
5 minutes remaining.
cadets get into company formation in front of Washington Hall in an area called the apron.
All right, right.
While the students gather, members of the West Point band play them into formation. Meanwhile, inside the mess hall, the waitstaff is setting out the water and bread for the 25-minute meal.
Oh, it's like everything you've seen in the movies. Before formation, we heard the band start kicking off, really telling us to fall in the companies.
4 count 4.
Once the accountability is taken of the company, then battalion, and the regiment, we all start marching to the beat of the drum to the mess hall. And really the drums help us stay in step, keep the cadence, and keeping our military bearing.
As cadets file in, the waitstaff has only 6 minutes to get the food from the hot carts onto each table.
We make sure that all the table is set in terms of etiquette and making sure that everybody has their silverware, plates, napkins, cups. The plebes are actually in charge of making sure that this etiquette actually happens.
Meals at West Point are full of traditions that the cadets observe, like the plebes pouring water for the upperclassmen.
Etiquette is a huge deal in the military, and so this kind of just reinforces from your first year here that etiquette is super important.
At the plebe end of the table, every seat has a specific role and responsibility.
Typically you'll have one person at the end, and that's your cold beverage corporal. They will be in charge of making sure that everyone has a cup full of water, because there's water pitchers on the table when you get there. And then there will be a gunner to the left of them at the end of the table. They're in charge of the desserts. And then to the right of the cold beverage corporal is the hot beverage corporal. That person is in charge of getting, if there's soup in the buffet line or like coffee in the mornings.
Take seats.
And then the plebes will call the table, which means that they basically say like the 4th class has performed all their duties and now we're ready to eat, and then at that point we all start eating our meal.
Portion sizes are crucial to ensure each cadet is receiving their daily caloric intake. But some tables in the mess hall receive more than the standard portion.
So there's a variety of different cadets here, right, with a variety of different nutrition needs, and they're always doing different levels of activity.
Tables with a heavy designation receive a portion and a half, and tables with a heavy, heavy sign get double portions.
For some of the athletes that we have to maintain a higher body weight for their sport, such as football or heavyweight wrestling or some of our track and field throwers, they require more calories to be able to support that activity, as well as keep their body weight in a range to be competitive in their sport. So they may need more calories to support that.
Let's go.
For cadets, lunch is a mandatory meal.
They're all coming here from all over the country and honestly all over the world because they're exchange students as well. So it's a way to make sure that they can build that camaraderie and build that build that team together by making them have that meal.
For upperclassmen, breakfast and some dinners are optional, where they can choose from several other options on campus. Another tradition in Washington Hall, all 4 years of students sit next to each other for lunch.
I love having a table with both freshmen, juniors, seniors. It definitely allows you to interact with people in your company that you normally wouldn't. And we switch tables every semester as well, so we get to build those new relationships with people throughout our 4 years here.
What are some of the favorite meals of the cadets here?
So I think probably the most favorite meal, and something you'll probably hear a lot, is there's a spicy chicken patty that the cadets absolutely love.
My favorite meal here would probably be either spicy chicken or the sweet and sour chicken with rice.
Favorite meal is definitely Crispito, sir. It's like a hot dog burrito, if I had to explain it.
I really do like the Taco Tuesdays. I also think they do a very good job with the seafoods.
What's your least favorite food here?
My least favorite food would probably be taco night.
Probably the pork chop.
I'm not really a big Philly cheesesteak guy.
Sometimes they'll get burnt out on eating chicken. There's only so many proteins that we can prepare. Chicken is one of them that really almost everybody eats. So, it's trying to find different ways to season the chicken or different ways to prepare the chicken so that, their palate doesn't get burnt out from eating the same thing.
This is Washington Hall inside the cadet mess area, as we call it. So behind me is the famous mural. The inspiration behind this was by General Douglas MacArthur, class 1903. And in the 1930s, he became Chief of Staff of the Army. He worked with the academic board here, and they came up with the concept of battles, leaders, commanders, and technology. You'll see Alexander the Great up top with a chariot. You'll see siege rams and so on. All the states are by admission. So you got Arkansas, Texas, Iowa, California, and so on. Behind me is the entrance from the mess hall when it was finished in 1929. So below me, about 3 or 4 feet, would be steps, and then the grass area out here. This was the front of the mess hall. So in the early 1960s, the idea was to expand the enrollment of the academy because the Army and the Air Force Academy, which was only a few years old, had an enrollment top of 2,500, where the Naval Academy had 4,000 midshipmen by law. So there's different aspects that occurred, but in 1965, the law was signed and they started building, expanding. So they built out from the original 1929 mess hall this way.
So at the end of the meal, normally they'll call upper class rest or brigade rise, and then at that point everybody can get up and leave. So at that point, meal is ended. It usually only takes like 12 to 15 minutes for everybody to eat, and then we're on our way to our next class.
And when does the next class usually start?
Our next class starts at 12:45.
As the cadets begin to leave Washington Hall, the waitstaff cleans the tables. And back in the kitchens, the cooks have begun preparing dinner, which is only 5.5 hours away. These cooks are grilling 4,200 beef tenderloin steaks at the U.S. Air Force Academy's 225,000 square foot dining hall near Colorado Springs, Colorado. And that's just for dinner. Over the course of 3 meals, the staff at Mitchell Hall will make 590 pounds of hash browns, 375 pounds of eggs, and 90 pounds of bacon for breakfast. Lunch will require an additional 127 pounds of bacon, 1,700 pounds of waffle fries, and 5,400 burger patties. On any given day, the cooks here are preparing 10,000 meals.
This is the biggest dining facility I've ever worked in. You look at 430 tables, family style. You got a starch, a meat, and the vegetable. You're looking at about 1,300 pans of food that are going on the table on a daily basis for lunch here.
But feeding 4,000 Air Force cadets isn't the same as feeding your average college student.
Their energy needs are quite high compared to the average person, where most people are trying to eat like 2,000 calories. These kids, I want them eating like much more than that and consistently throughout the day.
And on top of the bigger calorie count, lunch comes with a set of Air Force traditions 3 days a week. We got to see how one of the military's largest dining facilities cooks massive quantities of food across 3 different meals. Mitchell Hall has an annual budget of $20 million. In 2022, the dining facility purchased 546,000 pounds of meat, 1.2 million pounds of produce, and 21,000 gallons of milk, which were served across 3.5 million meals. Today's dinner is not just any meal. It's the Cadet Wings Recognition Dinner.
Recognition is a 3-day event where the freshman class is put through many stressful events to test their mental and physical stamina. Once you make it to recognition dinner, it's a sense of accomplishment. The freshman class is recognized as a fully qualified members of the Cadet Wing.
To celebrate, the staff is preparing 4,000 steaks, 1,600 pounds of tortellini, and 788 pounds of orange glazed carrots. The first steak hits the grill at 1 o'clock to ensure the meal is ready on time, 5 hours before dinner is served. The steaks move in an assembly line fashion. They're removed from their packaging, then placed on the grill, where they're seasoned and then cooked. They're then moved into a pan, wrapped, and wheeled away to be stored in hot carts to keep them warm until dinner. At the other end of the kitchen, the pre-made pasta is poured into pans, topped with pesto Parmesan Alfredo sauce, and moved into a rotating oven to cook. Preparing this much food requires an incredible amount of organization, but not just today. A meal like this is planned out more than a month in advance.
We really want to work 6 to 8 weeks ahead and commit, we call it committing our menu for that far in advance. Sometimes we'll find that in 8 weeks there's a holiday meal, so we need to make special preparations and changes to the menu for any special events that might be coming up.
And the recognition dinner is one of the most special meals of the year. In the front of the house, the dining area is prepped for the cadets. Back in the kitchen, onions, carrots, and mushrooms are cooked with a medley of seasonings for the vegetarian beef stew, while the rest of the staff strains 788 pounds of vegetables and moves them into hot carts for dinner service. As cadets begin filing into the dining hall, freshmen, known as fourth-year cadets, typically have to pass out plates and silverware for the table. After that, the fourth years read and study the Air Force Academy handbook, known as Contrails, as they wait to be seated, while upperclassmen quiz them. Tonight, the fourth years become fully recognized members of the cadet wing and will no longer have to perform these duties.
So during the year of freshman year, we're required to come in here, and after everything's set up, we have to hold our contrails at the position of attention and study them. So they make us do this, to form discipline because we're standing at attention, holding our arms up. So on Saturday night, it's a fun tradition to come in and have your upperclassmen do that with random objects.
0 grams, potassium, 160 milligrams, 4% sir.
And then you can ask them questions like they would with us, with our knowledge. We're like yelling at them in a fun manner, and it's just a really cool experience, tradition that we do.
Before dinner ends, the waitstaff brings out Mitch's Mountains, a dessert made earlier in the week by upperclassmen, just for today's occasion.
The Mitch's workers came in and they brought us these boxes and we're like, oh, what's that? And then they open them and it's just this pile of dessert. And so it's pound cake on the bottom, topped with a bunch of scoops of ice creams and whipped cream and cherries and American flags on top to celebrate our country. And so that was one of the cool experiences for us as freshmen.
After the meal, the staff in charge of the recognition dinner head home. In just 8 hours, a fresh team of cooks will arrive to prepare the next meal.
Good morning. Our head count for today has gone back down. We had to increase because of the weekend for recognition. So breakfast, we have scrambled eggs, bacon, and the roundabout hash browns. Let's have a good shift.
This morning, the cooks only have 2.5 hours to prepare breakfast for 1,500 students. It's a smaller meal because unlike most lunches during the week, cadets aren't required to attend. But it's still a challenge to finish on time.
The biggest challenge that we have right now is making sure that we have enough staff on hand to make sure that the job gets done on a daily basis. We are open 7 days a week, and we do serve 3 meals per day, so the work never stops.
Like many other kitchens, Mitchell Hall is still recovering from a staffing shortage caused by the pandemic. The 8 cooks on staff for this meal boil 375 pounds of pre-cooked scrambled eggs, heat up 90 pounds of bacon, and cook 560 pounds of hash browns in an industrial-sized fryer known as the Monster.
As our staffing dwindled, we've had to go to a lot of pre-done convenience items. For instance, boil and bag mashed potatoes, boil and bag mac and cheese. It's a very time-saving opportunity for us with the short staff that we have.
It's a proven method for serving large quantities of nutritious food with only a handful of cooks. The staff will spend the majority of their time transferring breakfast items into pans, where they will be set on the serving line for cadets to grab and go or dine in. But just as breakfast is being served, lunch prep is already underway.
So lunch today, the cadets are getting what we call the California burger. They're getting waffle fries today. Again, they get run through our Monster deep fryer as well. And we got the lettuce, tomato, onion kits that come in fresh, and those get placed on the table as well.
On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's no room for error in preparing the lunch meal. All 4,000 cadets are required to dine in at Mitchell Hall, and they're only given 20 minutes to eat.
There's only about a 30-minute window that they have between classes. Then right after that, they're going to another class of military training. So there's only a small window built in for them to eat in Mitchell Hall.
That limits their options. We can't provide endless options in a meal like that, so they do get their one main option. We usually have a lean protein option for them, and then we have a vegetarian option, and that's it. Where at like a traditional college, you're gonna go in and you're gonna have different types of cuisines available. We don't have that necessarily here. I think it's just the scale that we serve on is the biggest difference in how we provide food to our cadets.
Prepping the burger patties for 4,000 cadets takes about 4 hours. Cooks start by laying out the pre-cooked patties on a tray before moving them into the oven to heat up. In another part of the kitchen, cooks work together to feed 1,700 pounds of waffle fries into the deep fryer conveyor belt. As the fries exit, they are immediately put into pans that are later loaded into hot carts. Meanwhile, vegetables are boiled and seasoned in 2 100-gallon kettles.
So what we have here is our 100-gallon steam-jacketed kettles. We cook a very diverse amount of product through here. Right now we're doing Italian vegetables. That's one of the vegetables for lunch service today. Typically on veg, we'll do about 200 pounds worth of vegetables for a lunch service.
On the lower level of the kitchen, staff works to wash, chop, and pack fruits and vegetables for meals planned later in the week. Prepping food days in advance allows staff to seamlessly serve thousands of required meals.
There's a buffalo chicken wrap, Buffalo chicken tenders for vegetarians, waffle fries.
But even more crucial to their efficiency is planning the menu weeks in advance and storing the meals in the dining facility's 20,000 square foot warehouse.
When we are ordering foods, that order goes in all at the same time for the whole week. They get put into a category, and depending on that category is the day that they arrive.
Once everything comes off the elevator, we'll separate it and take it to wherever it needs to be. We have 4 storage departments: the warehouse, the freezer, meat, and dairy.
While the warehouse staff takes inventory and stocks next week's food, the kitchen staff is wrapping up lunch, moving the last few batches of food onto warming trays. Outside, cadets get into formation for the dine-in lunch, which is mandatory 3 days a week. The Air Force Academy band begins playing as the cadet wing marches toward Mitchell Hall.
2,500 men in the making march en masse to mess for meals like Mother never made.
Since the Air Force Academy was established in 1954, cadets have been required to march into lunch. Once inside, fourth years set the table and serve the food.
We set out all the plates, we set out forks, knives, and spoons if they're needed. I was at the position called the cold pilot. I pour the waters and set that all for the table. And then the person next to him is called the hot pilot, which he would get all the food ready, everything, the meat, the vegetables, and the carbs. He would set that for each freshman and every upperclassman.
Today is the freshman class's first lunch since recognition, where those responsibilities no longer fall on them. They dine like the rest of the cadet wing.
It is impossible to meet 4,000 cadets' nutritional needs and food likes and dislikes. And so really it's working on them on an individual basis, just emphasizing the importance of regular eating and how that affects both not only their academic performance, but their physical performance as well.
The Air Force Academy follows the nutrition standards outlined by the U.S. military, which requires its most active members to eat up to 4,700 calories a day for men and 3,000 a day for women. Mitchell Hall provides as much as 5,000 calories in a day, not including food from Falcon Express, the grab-and-go station inside the dining hall.
I order every single item that goes into there, so I try to balance it out too with things that are good and healthy for them, that provide a lot of energy and nutrition, with some fun things as well, like Cracker Jacks and potato chips and stuff like that.
At 12:15, lunch comes to an end. Cadets clear their tables and head to their next class. The waitstaff begins cleaning the tables and resetting the dining area. Back in the kitchen, the cooking staff starts prepping for dinner, which will be served in 5 hours.
I, for the first 5 weeks, did not take any days off. I was here open Sunday to Sunday, rocking out for our guys.
That's Chef Lex, one of just 10 chefs invited to cook for players inside the NBA bubble, a COVID-free isolation zone on Disney World's campus.
Right now, I'm getting brunch ready for the heat.
Disney was initially responsible for feeding the 22 teams that made it into the bubble. But after negative Twitter reviews and complaints from players, the NBA brought in chefs like Lex to live inside the bubble under strict quarantine.
Everything that we have to do has to be at the hotel. We cannot leave, we cannot wander.
She and the other chefs whip up about 4,000 meals a week. But Chef Lex is no stranger to star-studded clientele. She's cooked for the Portland Trailblazers, Oprah Winfrey, Kelly Rowland, Meek Mill, and competed on Food Network's Chopped. We followed Chef Lex to see what it's really like cooking thousands of meals for players inside the NBA bubble.
Let's feed our guys the best food possible.
For Chef Lex, each day inside the bubble starts at 4:30 a.m.
I'm just throwing on the same shirt and just throwing my hair up and, thank God, getting on a bus.
There are technically 2 zones within the NBA bubble. The inner bubble houses the players and staff, and the outer bubble is where the chefs live and work, and they're not allowed to cross between the 2 zones.
We have these really, really strict rules, and if you don't follow them, you have to go.
Chef Lex lives at the Waldorf Astoria, but cooks inside the executive chef kitchen, buses transport her between the two cleared areas.
Rise and shine, Mr. Will. Yes, my guy. Joy.
Rise and shine.
Rise and shine, sis.
Chef Lex and her assistant Joy run Comfort Kitchen, a pop-up Southern and Caribbean restaurant that Lex launched specifically for the NBA bubble. All the other chefs who came into the bubble were attached to a team, but Chef Lex came in as an individual chef.
I get to the kitchen and it's time to rock and roll. As soon as I get there, hit the ground running.
Teams can browse her menu and place team or a la carte orders through her website, but orders aren't guaranteed.
As teams leave, it is also affecting my sales, and we are all affected by the eliminations. But that's the name of the game.
Chef Lex receives her team orders the night before, so she has a chance to order all the food she needs. Since she's not allowed to leave the bubble, personal shoppers outside do all of her shopping.
Thanks, sis. On my way to cook. See y'all later.
Masked up and with her station very clean,
Washing my hands 50,000 times today.
Chef Lex and Joy get to work. They start with making the traditional breakfasts.
Right now, I'm getting brunch ready for the heat. They had an amazing game last night and won. So we are doing turkey bacon, chicken sausage. Follow me while I grab my catfish. Beautiful. For my catfish and grits. Literally the comfort food of the bubble. 11 o'clock and we have 1 hour to get all this food out. Crazy. Whew, but we're gonna make it happen.
Chef Lex, thanks for hosting this great team meal here for Heat Nation. It was a perfect way to celebrate our win last night. Appreciate you.
It's just Chef Lex and her assistant Joy doing all the cooking for Comfort Kitchen.
Joy, you good? Joy Dario is instrumental in keeping Comfort Kitchen open and running. I mean, I was able to walk away from certain parts of the cooking because I can micromanage sometimes.
Together, they're making all kinds of comfort food. Chicken and waffles, shrimp, chicken wings.
Let's go get this jalapeno salmon. All of the things that I made here are all my own recipes. I'm also like Jack, I want to say 20 times stronger now than when I got here.
Once everything's cooked, it's packaged up for the journey to the inner bubble.
Locked in, focused, baby. Almost done, baby. Joy, you almost done, baby? Yes, baby. The Celtics breakfast order, because of COVID, we have to make sure that we saran wrap the container, which is a really important step. And the bag, all bags are then labeled and stapled closed. That's one of the most important parts next to saran wrapping because it's how everybody identifies their food. And now we're keeping this in the hot box until it's time to go.
Because Chef Lex isn't allowed to enter the inner bubble, she has to hand off the food to runners.
For you, my dear, we got nuggets. This one is for NBA staff.
Then the relay race begins. The first runner can only go as far as the security point for the inner bubble. There, it's picked up by a second runner on the other side. That person finally delivers it to the players.
Chef Lex done it again. Your food is here. This is my go-to. French toast, bacon and eggs. Appreciate you, girl.
Good job, everybody. Good job, everybody.
Then it's back to the hotel to rest up and get ready to do it all over again.
Working in a situation where I am not able to directly hand off food to my client was really hard and a huge relinquish of power for me. Because I like my food to get there and be as beautiful as it was when I sent it out. But I have a lot of repeat customers, so that means that my runners have been doing a fantastic job. This has been probably the hardest work that I have done in quite a few years. Most work ever, but I swear I'm beasting. I'm really proud of myself. I feel like such a boss. Thank you for asking me to do this. Shout out to the NBA and the bubble and all the guys here.
More than 215,000 people are expected to flock to Miami for America's biggest sporting event. And all of those fans come with big appetites.
We do two things here. We play and we eat.
That's Dayani De La Cruz, or Chef D, the executive chef of the Super Bowl. She's in charge of feeding everyone, from the fans to the players and performers. She runs an army of 3,000 culinary professionals, hustling day and night, leading up to the big game. But they're not just serving up stadium nachos. They're also whipping up complex dishes like porchetta and seafood paella, and they're doing it all against the clock, delivering meals across a stadium the size of, well, a football field.
We are living on this amazing adrenaline rush, and it's like a bomb just blew in the middle of the kitchen. It feels like we all go to war. We all fight our own battles, and at the end of the run, we come back and we tell the stories about how we made it.
So how do they feed all of football's biggest fans? This year, Miami's Hard Rock Stadium is hosting the big game. The stadium and its caterer Centerplate are no stranger to big events. But for Super Bowl 54, things are taken up a notch.
We are doubling the building and everything that we're doing so far.
50% more staff was brought in just for Super Bowl Sunday, including dishwashers, line cooks, inventory staff, and 35 chefs flown in from all over North America. But the staff has to think beyond the game. There are also press events, NFL executive dinners, and the fan experience at Miami Beach Convention Center, which means on top of the 65,000 fans squeezing into the stadium, the chefs are responsible for feeding an extra 150,000 people in just 1 week. While it wouldn't share an exact number, Centerplate does expect millions of dollars in sales for the Super Bowl alone. To get it all done, the culinary team began planning for this event nearly 4 years ago, but it all comes down to the 24 hours before the Super Bowl.
There is a system to the madness. I know people don't believe that, but it is. There is something behind it. So this is how we work Super Bowl. Everything is in order. We kind of have a system. We have orders. We have labels.
Inventory staff receives all incoming produce, starting 36 hours before game day. It's hustled into storage or divided into kitchen fridges. Chefs typically do most of the cooking from 7 kitchens in the stadium. But for Super Bowl Sunday, they had to wheel in 3 extra mobile kitchens and outsource cooking to local vendors in the Miami Beach Convention Center. Main kitchens crank out food for lounges, suites, and concession stands. And in those stands, the staff aims to keep the time between ordering your food and getting it in your hand at 45 seconds.
Now these, what we do is we pre-cook them and we'll finish them in the oven the day of the game. And we'll keep them in the hot boxes at temperature and then we'll serve them.
Kitchens are divided up into cold and hot sections. In the cold kitchen, they're throwing together dishes like wedge salads and ceviche. In hot, they're frying up heaps of plantains and chicken wings. Chefs line up rows of turkey sandwiches, labor over vats of lamb curry, and dish out gallons and gallons of baked beans for the sweets. Here, they'll be cooking 10,000 hot dogs alone.
A little bit weary, tons of fun though. I'm a football fan, so go 49ers.
Once cooked, all the food is rushed down the stadium's secret highway under the stands.
Sorry, I walk fast. Tell me if I'm gonna slow down. We call this the belly of the beast. We are walking through what we call our area when it comes to food and beverage. I'm having a coffee macaroon so I can continue going. Anybody who walks on game day should have between 6 to 11 miles.
All this is in preparation for the biggest food rush, right before kickoff. Food heads up to one of the 85 concession stands and carts in the concourse. While some stands have small grills to finish up cooking, most rely on deliveries from downstairs whenever they get close to running out.
Let's just say that doesn't happen often, but if it does, then somebody calls the radio and then somebody runs really fast.
But with the stadium's massive size and thousands of people clogging up the concourse, deliveries can be tough.
It's a big giant that moves on his own sometimes. Today, you might be selling all the flat pie pizza. Tomorrow, you might be selling all the burgers. So it's all about readjusting and making sure that we manage the expectation.
Upstairs, they're handling smaller tasks, but the same amount of food.
We are in what we call the cold side area for suites. Out of these 2 kitchens, we fit about 157 suites. Imagine 157 small restaurants. We are in the best kitchen at Hard Rock Stadium. Who is the second Super Bowl? We got two pioneers, 3.
Here, they're slicing up cheese and roasting racks on racks of mushrooms.
Imagine what you see here and cook for 600 people for me.
The team cranks out 400 different menu items on Super Bowl Sunday alone. And if one thing breaks, well...
If one oven breaks, it's like a domino effect. something is gonna fall behind. So you can't take anybody's for granted, especially in such a large operation like what we have here.
And in this game, the size is the biggest hurdle. At a regular restaurant for a regular day, you might order just 2 cases of lobster tails.
Instead of receiving 2 cases of lobster tail, you're receiving 3,000. We just smoked about 4,400, almost 5,000 pounds of pork butts. Right now, actually, I'm bringing about 9,000 cookies, which is crazy. I just called my vendor and I say, I need more cookies.
Luckily, Chef D can rely on others to help make the magic happen. She's hired 40 local vendors to churn out everything from 4,000 popsicles within a week to cake pops, cookies, and bundt cakes for the sweets.
Working 24 hours a day. I have 4 shifts right now. I have to rent extra refrigeration.
This is the founder of Pastries Art, a family-owned bakery in charge of all the desserts for the Super Bowl. And yes, she did get that call for those 9,000 cookies.
Chef D is super funny. We plan and get organized, and then she said, "Oh, by the way, Mama, just so you know, I may order a little bit more cookies." I'm like, "Okay, sure, no problem. How many more?" I don't know, about 2,500 more. And I said, "Sure, Chef, no problem. I got it. And then when I hang up the phone, I'm like, "Oh my God, we have 2,500 more cookies."
It's Centerplate's 15th Super Bowl, but it's Chef D's first.
We are, all of us, bearing ourselves to thousands of fans out there. I always tell everybody, on game day, find a little moment, and look down into the bowl and find yourself thinking, pat yourself in the back and say, "I did that."